Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of Open Mic with the MVP Marco. I am, of course, your host, the MVP Marco. And I call it a special show because I have a special guest with me. He's coming down the aisle right now. And his name is J Bone. J Bone,
Yeah, I'm coming down the aisle. Let me tell you something. This is me, J-Bone, and I'm gonna come down that aisle. All right, we're start off hot here.
Yeah, I know, right? So if you can't tell, this is a special episode because we are, reviewing the Netflix series Mr. McMahon. We're gonna go through each episode. Obviously, we're not gonna sit here for 6 hours doing it, but we're gonna hit each episode. We're gonna give our thoughts on the series, and then hopefully our thoughts on Mr. McMahon himself. Is he far from the character he portrayed on television, or is it the same guy that he was just living his life out on TV, living his fantasies? We'll answer those questions definitely. I think he was pretty much living his fantasies, but we'll get into that later on. But J Bone, what are your thoughts on so we'll jump into this. So recently Piers Morgan, he did a panel with some former employees of Vince McMahon, as well as Phil Mushnick, the arch nemesis of Vince McMahon. And Piers Morgan's the only person I've seen do anything on this docuseries besides me and you. They're the only two that are actually tackling this right now. So what were your thoughts on how he put that panel together, what their thoughts on it, because they talked about the docuseries and they're pretty much going to answer the same questions. They answer the same questions we're going to try to answer. Right. Is Mr. McMahon who he is on TV, or is he just a straight up guy and everyone loves him? What were your thoughts on Piers Morgan's attempt to jump into the ring, as they say?
What a Survivor Series crew he had, huh? Maven, Vince Russo, Jonathan Coachman, and Charlie Caruso.
Yeah, buddy.
For one thing, to be honest with you, he, of course, he had Vince Russo, who's there, fairly early on. I guess he had covered WWE as a journalist in the early '90s. He mentions that, and then of course we know Vince, bro. Let me tell you about the Attitude Era, bro. The Attitude Era is where everything was at, bro. Okay. Anyways, he gets into that, but man, this was trash TV at its best.
Yeah, it didn't seem like
car crash TV.
It wasn't serious at all. It didn't seem like it was like Piers Morgan. He wasn't really a good mediator.
No,
between it seemed like they were kind of not all. It seemed like they were all pandering almost. So not like, I don't want to say pandering. It seemed like they were saying like Vince McMahon was a great guy, blah blah blah. But it's like, I mean, they worked with him. Obviously, we never worked with him, so he could have been a good boss to them and stuff like that. But I mean, judging from the series and what we're seeing now, I don't know. I don't think I think they could have been a little bit more honest. I think it seemed like they all wanted, like, they didn't want to step on any toes or anything like that. Or
and I guess that's kind of the issue, the crux of the situation with what Vince is going through right now is the power he wielded as boss. And I mean, I guess even now, so people are still afraid to kind of talk about Vince McMahon, as far as especially behind the scenes, because you never know what's going to happen in pro wrestling. And, but I think, of course, when we'll get into, I'm sure we'll get into all the scandals and whatnot, but I think Vince is probably done for good. I mean, he sold off every piece of ownership he had to the company, so he no longer holds any power at all. Like, he's just a civilian. He's like, he owns the same amount of WWE as I do. 0%. That's crazy to think about.
That is actually, I didn't even thought of it that way. He's just a mark like the rest of us now.
Yeah. Stupid mark. Anyways, but no, I mean this Piers Morgan thing was classic TV. You know, he sets everybody up with the what do you think of Phil Mushnick and da, 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 da. They give their thoughts, and and then he goes, oh, just like pro wrestling goes, you need a good run in, and he brings Phil Mushnick in. I think Maven in this thing accidentally kind of stooged it off a little bit by accident because he was like, I did know that Phil Mushnick was going to be
Yeah.
here. So, but there's no way, like, you know, that Maven knew and the rest didn't, you know. But I mean, they gave their honest opinions of Phil Mushnick. Phil Mushnick, man, he's like, he did not look good in this interview at all.
No, he didn't. No.
It was like he was portrayed as old man yelling at the clouds.
Yeah.
And he's like looking at the screen. He's looking down at the screen the whole time, like yelling at Vince Russo, like, dude, camera's up here, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't fare too well. And I was kind of, you know, obviously we'll, you know, sing his praises a little bit on for this docuseries because, you know, he's one of the first people to, you know, whether, like they said, whether the accusations back then were, you know, false or true, he was the only one out there actually reporting on it.
Right.
And
Right.
it seems like a lot of the things he was reporting on is, you know, now have come to light, which is, you know, he was a little too early in his crusade against Vince McMahon.
Right.
If he
And I
waited
mean,
about, you know, 30, 40 years, he would have been he would have been right on the money pretty
right.
much.
And I mean, you know, he you know, kudos to him for doing that for all those years, you know, um, trying to, you know, bring the light of, you know, what I mean, that's his job, right? I mean, his job is to sell papers, of course, as they
Yeah.
talked about. But I mean, his job is also to, hey, I got an interesting story. I got to be a journalist. Now, there's of course some interesting things with Vince Russo said in here that was like, dude, bro, you didn't go to the steroid symposium that he had.
Yeah.
He kept saying that steroid symposium. Okay, all right, but what is this the what did I don't know, Scientific Inquirer or something. Anyway, he but you know, I'm got mixed feelings about Phil Mushnick. Now, in the documentary, he was portrayed pretty well. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that. You know, I feel like he was, but you know, called him a dirtbag. Called Vince a dirtbag. That is Vince McMahon. But yeah, I mean, Phil Mushnick is somebody that, you know, was attacked pro wrestling for years, and I think wrestling fans have just been like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, who the hell are you? You don't even watch the product, you know,
Yeah.
really. You know, you're not a fan. You know, why are you trying to do this? But I think Phil Mushnick uh was attacked, I guess. I think attacked wrongly at times, but I mean, again, that's how McMahon and your Cornettes, you know, they attacked him live on Monday Night Raw a couple of times. I don't know if you remember that. You know, Cornette used to have those segments, those like shoot segments, you know, on
Oh
Raw
yeah, that's right.
back in
Yeah,
the
that's
day,
right.
and he would attack Phil Mushnick on there, um, because of like some things that he would say about death of pro wrestlers, which I think he was trying to bring it to light.
Yeah, which is a
Like
thing.
like
Or
like
was a
Brian
thing.
Pillman. I remember it was right after Brian Pillman's death, you know, and
Yeah.
he would talk about that. But Phil Mushnick, though, I think he was trying to. I think he was probably a fan of pro wrestling. And in fact, if you were actually look at this interview, he is a fan of pro wrestling, especially like your 70s. You know, he talked about Bruno, how Bruno was a good man. He like used things like work, like words like work, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think he's a fan of pro wrestling. I just think he was not a fan of what McMahon was doing.
Yeah.
Specifically, you know, especially although there was a ton of scandals going on then in the late 80s, early 90s, and I guess we could kind of start getting into that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. So, um, so the first episode, obviously, they titled it Junior,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically, because he's Vince McMahon Jr.
Right.
Obviously, it talks about, his father, his early life with his father. Um, when young Vince McMahon, set his eyes on the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, as it was called back then. Um, and then obviously he, the story, he bought it from his father. Is
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, let's get into that a little bit, because I kind of want to, talk about the relationship with his father and the way his father treated him. And we kind of talked about
Yeah.
this a little bit off air before we did this, not off air before the show, but like Justin talks, like, you
Right.
want to, when you usually when you're, it doesn't matter if you're a parent or whatever, when you're a young lad or young lady in your, in your family, and you see things that aren't, that you don't want to repeat. We'll say that your parents have done that you don't
Mm.
want to repeat. It's called like breaking the cycle, as
Right.
they call it. And it seems like Vince Jr. Um, did not do that with his, his family. Um, that we'll also get into. It seemed like he kept the same, you know, attitude as his father kept with him. His father was very, it seemed like, I mean, Evie, I mean, the other good thing too we got to express too is Vince McMahon is, he's speaking on this documentary. So these are, words that are coming out of his mouth. Him talking about how his father wasn't the best dad, wasn't the most loving person in the world. Kind of treat him as like a second class citizen in his home. Grew up in a trailer, all that type of stuff. He did he say, I believe his stepfather raised him, right, or something like that, or one of
Yes.
his.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he didn't know his dad till he was like 12 years old.
yeah, that's right.
And or he never met his dad. I think he knew that, the stepdad wasn't his dad, but
Yep.
he didn't meet him till he's 12 years old. And then I don't think they really got into how the meeting came about. I think I remember seeing some stuff like way back when, like I think he was, he was shipped off to a boarding school at one point, I believe.
Yep.
And I think his dad actually paid for it because he was like a troubled kid, I guess. But they talk about, I guess, one of the big things that upbringing was really shocked me in this. I'd always heard that he was um, sexually abused. He had
Yes,
mentioned that,
they did bring that up. Yep.
and I thought maybe okay, you always assume okay it's the dad or whatever. Oh, it was his mom. You know,
Yeah, he
so
alluded to that
but
definitely.
what's interesting is he still had a close relationship with his mom
Yeah.
even up till her passing. She just passed away like 2-3 years ago, I believe. Not that long ago.
Yeah, she was really old too when she passed
Yeah,
away.
yeah. She was like almost 100, pushing 100.
Yeah.
But I almost want to. This is kind of, I guess, gets a little dark, but if you saw like the Jake the Snake stuff, Jake Roberts had dealt with something similar,
Yeah, with his
but
family, his father.
it was his father that was pushing his stepmom on him. So
Yeah, that's right.
I
Yeah.
wonder if that was like just a thing back then. Just a
Yeah.
weird kink that men that age had. Or I don't
Oh, I
know.
didn't even think of that. That's actually a good point. Yeah, that's right.
Because I mean, to me, you know, if anybody, whether it's a parent or not, it doesn't matter who it is, if they abused me, I'm not gonna have a relationship with them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So,
that's a
but he
given.
still he still had a relationship with her, all these years. So
Yeah,
I don't know. It's an interesting situation, of course. So
yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, obviously you want to you want to believe people and stuff like that, but how much was it something that he's seen as abuse, or was it, I don't know. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you still, actually, I can't say that because some people do continue relationships with people that abuse them and stuff like
well,
that, and
that's true. You
that
had
is, it's
was
a
it
psychological thing, so that
what's it?
can't happen. So
What do they call that? Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank right now.
I can't.
Where where where, where you favor your captor or your abuser.
Oh yeah, it's
I can't think right now. Anyways, I'm obviously not a psychologist, so that's
But
okay.
yeah, there are situations where that happens that I didn't even like think of that was
Yeah.
possible, and it's his mom too. So it's like, I
Right.
mean, you're gonna love your mom no matter what, especially if you're a son.
Right.
They always talk about the love between a mother and son and how that can never be replicated and things like that. So a lot of deep rooted things when it comes to that situation. So yeah, I could definitely see that side, but yeah, definitely a hard, a hard childhood for Vincent J. McMahon. No, his
Uh,
father was no Vincent
JJ
Kennedy McMahon.
Vincent
Sorry,
Vincent K.
his father's
McMahon,
Vincent
yeah.
J.
VKM baby, VKM.
VKM and VJM. But yeah, he that's kind of lays the that first episode kind of lays the groundwork almost for you know everything else that you'll see throughout the series.
Yeah.
And almost when you learn about his upbringing and the stuff he went through, it kind of plays into all the things that happens later on in his life. Kind of maybe not
Right.
having a childhood, the
Right.
greatest childhood, and maybe living out his childhood later on in life. A lot of people do that as well. They
Yeah.
didn't really deep dive into like how bad his childhood was, but he told story when he was on Pat McAfee's show. He did an interview. He talked about that. Getting into fights all the time, just being a bad kid, and like you said,
Yeah.
sending him off to military school, and trying to set him straight. And I think that's where he got his. I mean, from obviously from the people that work with him and stuff like that, like his way of working, like his
Mhm.
ways of working, you should say, the environment he set up for in the corporate setting anyway, not the other stuff, but
Right.
like being properly dressed all the time, addressing him as Mister whatever.
Mhm.
I've seen things where if it was a meeting, he walks into the room, everyone stands up until he sits down, and then everyone else can sit down.
Another thing is his, which surprised me with those text messages that we saw from in the in the in the in the
The Janelle
lawsuit.
Grant, yeah,
Yeah, the lawsuit, but he was big on having what they call King's English speech. Like this was very,
yes,
very, very proper speech. But if you read those text messages, like freaking 15-year-old
yeah,
texting.
yeah,
It's not
juvenile.
it's not even necessarily like the subject matter, of course, but it's like the way he would text, like, dude, what do you do? Like, no
Yeah, dude.
punctuation, no nothing. That's why it's like it's weird.
Like I said, it was like one of those things. Like in the corporate setting, it was like
Yeah,
all proper. Like I was seeing like employees, certain like women had to wear, business, like
business
business,
casual.
like blazers and business skirts. Men had to
Yeah.
be suit and tie all the time. Um, and then obviously with the sneezing stuff, and sneezing was a
Yeah.
sign of weakness. Yeah, so that type of stuff, and then
I hate
and then
sneezing.
and then how you can't say he didn't I mean he ran the business for what 40 years,
Yeah,
um and you can't say it wasn't successful. Whatever he was doing in that in the business side of things was almost genius in that sense. But then you know the behind the scenes stuff is what we're obviously going to be talking about when it comes to
right.
Mr. McMahon. But I mean, yeah, I mean, basically, he, just to shorten up the, first episode, he, meets his father. His father's kind of a dick to him, you know, wants to be a part of the family business, and he's like, no, get the hell out of here. You're not gonna. I'm
Yeah,
not. I think he had him do like stupid shit, like, he had him like he was like ring announcing and
right,
doing like not giving him like a full like nepo type deal, like, no, you're gonna
right,
work for this. And even not giving him the company, he had to buy the company off
right.
of
He
him.
had to buy the company. Yeah,
Yeah. So like just as in the his father never saying he loved him or never hugging him, that type of stuff. And that's it might seem kind of like stupid to talk about, but later on in life, it's gonna show up somewhere
right.
when you're not getting that love from your dependent, especially obviously your mother's gonna show you love if you're a boy, but the father for a son, like for the son, is like that's the hero, that's the guy that you look up to. So you definitely definitely want that admiration. You definitely want to get your hugs and your I love you, son, you're doing a great job. That none of that stuff from his father. It seemed like his father did not utter any kind words to him or any encouraging words at all to
And I think,
young Vince.
I think that's just was kind of the times as well too. If you think about it, like
Yeah, I can see that.
I think like probably like our dads maybe. At least I'm speaking for
Yeah,
myself.
my dad was kind of like that too. He had to warm up a little bit to
Yeah,
the I love yous and all that
but
stuff.
that's what I'm saying. Like I think our dads maybe really kind of broke that cycle a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yep,
Because used to it was like you don't hug your son. That's like a sign of weakness. You don't hug. I think that was just in general.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's just how men
Stop
thought at the
crying.
time. Just stop
You're
crying. That kind of stuff. And I think I mean, of course, I know we both do. We both work hard, but I think men just in general, like they had a lot of pressure on them during that time because a lot of times it was okay, the woman was the home the home took care of the home, and
yep,
the men took care of did the work and brought the money home, blah blah blah
yeah,
blah blah. Now it's different, where you have you know um which in a good way is you have mom and dad working now,
yep,
and I think there's a lot less pressure on men. Maybe I think that's maybe part of it to like have to like okay, I gotta like kill it every day at
yeah,
work. um, I would think that's very possible, but I think just men from that era just didn't show affection. Like that's just not a
yeah,
thing. But I think, like I said, our fathers probably started the trend of breaking that a
yeah,
little bit, because I think my dad is a little the same as like probably what you're talking about, but um, again, I'm just speaking from my experience, and like my dad's great. I mean, he was like one of those that provided. He's a provider, so he's always working. We're always working, trying to do what he can do.
yeah,
That's kind of where I'm kind of just going with that. And maybe it was kind of the same thing with Vince and with Vince Senior and Vince Junior. And then Junior kind of took that like, oh, this is how you have to be a dad, you know,
yeah, yep, yep,
like you were alluding to earlier, with breaking the cycle. And I think that's another thing from our generation, like breaking the cycle has been being a very common way of doing things nowadays.
yeah,
Even like uh, getting real personal here, but um, my mom, she would always say like, hey, we gotta, I just want to break the cycle, from issues that she's had and things
yeah,
like that. So, um, but yeah, I think that's a very common thing nowadays. But yeah, the relationship is very interesting. I would have to say borderline toxic.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what he did I mean, he did, in a sense, just kind of to wrap up this episode, he did, in a sense, break the cycle of, wrestling in general, like professional wrestling,
Right.
the way it was ran. Instead of, breaking the cycle with his family, it was like, no, I'm going to break the cycle with how
Wrestling's
this is
done.
run. I'm going to, back then it was like, it was territories. Every part of the country had their own promotion, all that stuff. And they never, intermingled. They all had their own champions. They all had, all that type of stuff. They
Hmm.
may, you may have like reached out to one of the, the other promotions champions and said, hey, can you come over and, have a match with, one of our champions or one of
Hmm.
our upstarts, that type of thing. But other than that, it was really no intermingling. But the owners were all, it was like a mafia, almost like a
Right.
mob, like a crime family. Like they all had their own territories. You don't come in on this territory or something bad will happen. But Vince McMahon was like, no, I'm breaking that cycle. I'm gonna close down all the territories. I'm gonna completely take control over everything.
Yeah.
And that obviously that ruffled feathers. I mean, if you listen to a lot of those, even Jim Ross's podcast, he talked about those meetings of, actually doing a mafia deed to Vince
Yep.
McMahon Jr. and getting rid of him because he was, killing the territories. But then, just to go on, Vince McMahon Sr. ends up, selling the company to Vince Jr. and basically telling him, hey, you don't do anything. Basically, don't do anything stupid. Don't
Don't rock the boat,
don't
Vinny.
step on any toes. You're
That's
the
the
young
quote.
guy. You're the young fresh guy in this business. a lot of history here. Don't, I've created this thing. I've created relationships. Don't ruin it. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure thing, Dad. I'll show
All right,
you.
pops.
Yeah. And then, just to, like I said, end this episode again, Hulk Hogan comes into play, who
Oh
was,
God.
working for Vince McMahon
Do we
Sr.
have to talk about Hogan?
I mean, he's an integral part of this, obviously.
I know, I know,
But
I know.
he ends up getting fired. Vince McMahon Sr. fires him because Hulk Hogan wants to do Rocky 3,
Mm-hmm.
Thunder Lips. And he's like, no, we don't do that. You're a wrestler. You don't, you're not a Hollywood guy. You stay in. And Hogan was like, no, that doesn't work for me, brother. Even back then. And fucking just, does it. He gets fired. And then, lo and behold, when, Vince McMahon Jr. drops the one of the W's and makes a WWF instead of WWF, he
Mhm.
hires back Hulk Hogan as his main attraction.
Yep.
Which, as he even said, he was like, God, look at this guy. Like, he's like fucking, he's, big, good looking guy. Like,
Vascularity.
yeah, like how could you, how could you get rid of him? Like, this is just because he did a movie. Who cares? I mean, we're gonna be doing tons of movies. I'm gonna let everybody do. Like, he already had that like vision in his head. Like, I mean, which was a good. I mean, good and bad. Like, he did change the course of professional wrestling. Um, but
We
at the
make
same
movies.
time, bad because he kind of killed, what was before it. He kind of lost. He kind of killed the tradition of professional wrestling in the sense with, the territories and how it was ran and things like that. So, but we wouldn't be where we are today talking about it anyway.
Right.
Anything else from episode 1 is really just like a history
Yeah, it was more
lesson on
than, and one thing I want to say too, I saw a lot of complaints about this documentary, especially from wrestling fans, like, "Oh yeah, we already knew all this stuff." It's not.
It's not
It's
for
not.
you. It's
It's not
not
for
for you
you.
guys.
It's not. It's not.
It's not for you, Marks.
No, it's for new people, and I
Yeah.
think this documentary was more. I mean, yeah, yes, it was about McMahon, of course, but you can't tell McMahon's story without telling the history of WWE,
And,
which
and not
was
without him in it and without him
yeah,
actually talking about it. That's the
right,
other side
right.
of it too.
So,
You should be so lucky. Like, we've been wrestling long time wrestling fans that we've never seen Vince McMahon like actually like really talk
yeah.
about anything pertaining to that business besides, like I said, the Pat McAfee, and he really
Well,
didn't say much on
and
that.
yeah, he did, but he also gets. Of course, we'll talk about it later on. They get into Owen's death and
Yes, yeah.
Chris Benoit
You never
issue as
heard
well
his thoughts
too.
on it really,
Yeah, so
but yeah. So let's get into the second episode, which is called Heat. I don't know why. I forget what maybe it's because of the scandals
yeah,
that start to pop
scandals
up.
is brewing here.
But yeah, so obviously, WrestleMania 1 happens as they kind of skip Saturday night's main event. Obviously, wrestling being in the prime time on network television was huge. I was like,
Yeah,
I mean, both WrestleMania 1 and that game changing for
this is just
professional
like
wrestling.
if you think about it, because wrestling was looked at as like roller derby, right? Like kind of saying like, okay, yeah, let's or like a monster truck show, right? Like, let's
Yep.
they're in town, let's go check it out, whatever. Just imagine like, I guess monster trucks got at one point decently big, but not as big as
Yeah.
wrestling did. But now it's like really, they don't really hardly ever show it now.
Yeah.
But just imagine monster truck rally was on primetime television, or roller derby was on primetime
Yeah.
television.
On
This,
NBC
this is
or
this is the
fucking,
equivalent of this.
yeah.
Wrestling just won in that category. So
Yeah. So it's insane. Just like you said, just even the thought of that back then was like, holy shit, this is like professional wrestling is on network television. Like, millions of people are going to be watching this.
yes,
Not on some like closed circuit television channel. This
yep.
is countrywide right now. So, like I said, already changing. Vince McMahon, making waves. Kind of killing the business, but kind of recreating it at the same time when it comes to that. And obviously, like we said, WrestleMania 1 was a huge success for them. Brought in Mr. T, had the rock and wrestling thing going with Cyndi Lauper and Captain Lou and all that stuff. So it was way in the in the media and stuff like that. Um, so it was kind of like back. It's obviously now it's a lot more present in everything, but back then it was like how it is now. It was like on MTV. celebrities wanted to be a part of it.
Mhm.
Be it Hollywood, the music industry, everyone wanted to be a part of WWF and WrestleMania at the time. So huge. I mean, big difference from when obviously his father was running it, in, the Mid South and all that stuff. Obviously, you had the Andy Kaufman. That was
Mm.
kind of like that crossover, but that was Memphis. That wasn't anyone else. It was Jerry the King
Soap.
Lawler.
Soap.
Yeah.
It's not soap. It's soap.
Yeah. Yeah. So like that since that time, that's the only like time you really seen that kind of crossover. This was even bigger. So this is crossing over like to different genres of music and television,
Mhm.
television because of Mr. T being a part of WrestleMania. The biggest like celebrity at the time, Mr. T.
Yeah.
From old to young, all love Mr. T. He was like freaking America's sweetheart back
Yeah.
then. And
Yeah.
he, Vince McMahon got a hold of him and put him on WrestleMania, and rest is history.
Rest
Um,
is history for
what are
sure.
your thoughts on that? Like the him taking over and then just like immediately going left field with
Well, I mean,
professional wrestling.
again, like we talked about, I mean, of course, I'm a lifelong wrestling fan, so I've heard these stories. So, I think personally, I guess I don't have an issue with him like necessarily, killing the territories. I mean, I guess we're kind of getting into my own personal views. I mean, America's a free market,
Yeah,
uh, and so if you got an idea, you got a way to grow your business, do it. You know, uh, kind of like how he said in there. Now, there was some shady things, and we'll go back real quick. There's a Dark Side of the Ring talking about it's talking about the Black Saturday whenever McMahon buys Georgia Championship Wrestling,
yeah,
and he does it it's very not ethical, shall we say. It was a great episode actually, and that watching that actually I learned a lot about Vince McMahon through there. Of course, Vince is not in it, but um, that's a good little companion piece to this documentary.
yeah, definitely.
Um, and they actually so it was done by of course Vice TV. Vice TV also did an unauthorized McMahon documentary too
Yes,
about it. They put it out
definitely
about a
check that out.
year ago, or I believe.
Yeah,
But of course, I've heard all these stories. Again, I don't necessarily have a problem with it because all of these promoters, they all had the same opportunity as Vince McMahon did.
yep,
Maybe Vince had a little bit more power, stroke, and money, being that it was New York, right?
yeah,
But like you take like Vern Gagne, he really controlled the wrestling world
yeah,
for years, but he never crossed those lines, as they say. He never put like Ric Flair in California necessarily, as AWA champion or anybody Nick Bockwinkel or anything like that.
yep,
So they never crossed those lines until or really ever. I mean, I guess until really Vince started doing this. Uh, so I don't really have a problem with it. And in fact, it's what helped grew the wrestling business to what it is today,
yeah.
and allowed wrestlers would have such a great life. Well, back up. Great way to make a living, should I say?
Yes, yeah, yep,
Maybe they didn't have a great life because of things they had to do, but to get there. But they were afforded to make a good living because of Vince McMahon. That's about all the glowing words I'm going to have about Vince
yeah,
McMahon in here. But so I don't really necessarily have an issue with it.
yeah. And the other side of that too is during this time, obviously, to put on these shows, obviously, he's spending a lot of money to get these shows going,
Uh,
especially around like WrestleMania 2 when they're doing multiple cities. They're doing 2 a days, three a
right.
days. No, not with WrestleMania, but just in general, just like wrestling. He made it so kind of like made it such a boom period that they were just constantly going, which leads into later on when you get into the the drugs and the steroids and all that stuff, and trying to be that peak performer. Kind of like leads into it when you're pushing these guys as much as he was back then.
Mhm.
And they all probably had their own merit in the sense where they're like, this is we're trying to grow, we're trying to help grow this business. Let's just do it. They weren't probably thinking about later on how they get their body's gonna break down, or they're gonna need this extra thing to keep them going. They're just
Right.
thinking, man, this is huge. We're getting paid. This is something new. We got to get this. We're a part of history. Let's keep it
Let's get
moving.
it.
Let's move it. Let's move it forward.
Yeah.
In the they didn't really get into how did they get into how he got that network deal? Wasn't he
Well, I
friends with?
know he was friends with Dick Ebersol,
That's
who
right.
was head of NBC Sports at the time, and they needed to put something on. Dick Ebersol was also producer of Saturday Night Live as well too, so they needed to put something on
That's right.
when Saturday Night Live wasn't running as well, so that's why it became Saturday Night's main event.
Yeah.
So
They didn't bring up something too on here that a little people know about. So when they were doing those, like WrestleMania 1, and they were doing those like closed circuit, so you can watch it, um, kind of like not really pay per view yet. Boxing got involved
yeah,
with the WWF. Boxing is where it is because of Vince McMahon. Pretty much, they piggyback off of right, like
yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I don't know if you remember
I think
this,
was it Sugar Ray
Sugar
and
Ray
Hitman
Leonard. Yeah,
and
hit
Hearns? Was
and
it Hitman
Hearns. Yeah,
Hearns
yeah,
and Sugar Ray? Was it that fight that they kind of did like a almost like a back to back, or like a they promoted it? They promoted that fight through. Was it WrestleMania 1 or 2? I forget, or
I think
3.
it
I
was
forget which one it
2.
was. WrestleMania 2. That's right. Um, so like they seen. We got to talk about this too. Like as much as we're gonna probably shit on Vince McMahon later on in this thing, he was responsible for a lot of things that you're seeing now as far as pay per view. Big proponent in pay per view. He pretty much like I'm not sure if he started pay per views, but he pretty much did with the
Yeah,
with the
well, you see,
WrestleManias.
he helped grow the business for
Yeah.
sure.
And then getting boxing into it. So now boxing is starting to do take on that model that Vince McMahon's doing, and putting on pay per views and stuff like that. Later on, the WWE Network pretty much started all this like streaming. I
Yeah,
shouldn't say exclusive streaming, like the Paramount Pluses, the
right. No, they
Peacock,
did.
the Sony. Like when those companies take their own things and say, hey, we're not going to license this to Netflix or anyone else. We're just going to
Mhm.
build our own streaming service, and we own enough, movie properties and things like that, and IPs. We can just do our own. Vince McMahon started that. WWE Network is pretty much the first. Be obviously Netflix was around, but
Right.
Netflix didn't own any of that stuff. They were licensing all those movies.
Mhm.
WWE Network was its own licensed, streaming service where it owned its own all of its, content. It was like
Mhm.
the first person content streaming service.
Mhm.
And then obviously now later on you get, like I said, you get like, Disney Plus is doing it now, Peacock, um, one I think MGM Studio started doing it. Paramount Pictures is doing it now. So like I mean, they probably would never give him credit for it, but he showed success in those things before they even happened. But
Yeah.
we'll kind of go back to the 80s, travel back to the
Right.
80s of WrestleMania 2.
Right.
Um, so obviously, off of the Saturday night's main event, WrestleMania 1. I kind of alluded to it. They were like working. Even Hulk Hogan said it on there. They were working like 2 times a day, 3 times a day, maybe
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
a new show, and then traveling with
Even
it like the next town over and doing another show that night, stuff like that. So they were working overtime, which leads to you get a lot of people working, not really any benefits,
mm.
when you do this. So
Some people want to go down to the Baja.
some
Thermite.
people, yeah, some people talk about thermite. And yeah, some people are like, you know what? We are working a lot. We do need some, type of, benefits or, like a more safe and productive way of working. Let's start a union. And that was Jesse Ventura was like, let's start a union. And this was before WrestleMania 2. He
Mm-hmm.
tried to get the guys together and start a union. But yeah, I guess his plans got extinguished very fast because a blonde haired fellow, a blonde tanned fellow,
Starts stroking that Fu
yeah,
Manchu and said,
ran to the boss and said,
"That's not
"Hey
going to
man,
work for me, brother."
yeah, Jesse's trying to start a union, brother. I think you should say something." And guess what?
What a piece
When
of shit.
Vince McMahon came up, they were like, I don't know anything about it. What are you talking about? People started fearing for their lives, like they don't want to lose their jobs. So yeah, that
What a
was kind of a
piece of shit.
shitty. He
It's
didn't even say why he did it, right?
no, I know exactly why he did it. I mean, if you start a union, that means you have to start giving equal pay.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So brother's going to lose money. Come on now.
See,
That's why
me
it's not
being
going to
that
work
like
for him.
yeah, me being that level headed, like, not thinking of like myself anyway in that
Right,
situation.
right,
I'm not thinking that he's going, hey, I'm not sharing my payday with these
right.
guys. Fuck that
Exactly.
shit.
That's exactly what was going on in his mind because that's what was going to have to happen. So
He wasn't gonna get the big bucks anymore.
yeah, he wasn't. Yeah, he wouldn't even be big dog anymore, and so
Oh, what a dick,
that's why
man.
he did that, and that's why he's a piece of shit. Now, I'll be honest, with you, I'm not a huge fan of unions in general. This is my
Yeah.
personal opinion, but I do think, like, especially then, wrestlers needed some type of benefits package or something. It's still to this day, it blows my mind that they're contract employees, they're 1099 employees, meaning they do not receive a W-2. They have to pay out their own taxes.
Yep.
Usually you have to do like a quarterly payment. I mean, you could do it however you want it, but it's better if you do quarter payments. So you won't hit with such a big bill at the end of the year. But these guys are not technically employees, but then you get into it, they're signed to deals where they can't exclusive deals where they can't. So of course, that's still happening to today, where they
Yeah.
can't go work. WCW, NWA, Mid Atlantic, whatever. They have to work for WWF, and then, like I said, still to this day, where WWE employees can't go to AEW.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that is, in some regards, good for the business. Well, it was definitely good for the business, but it's good for maybe even good for the wrestlers in some parts. In that, like, if when their contract goes out, then they have this exposure of a new audience, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh wow, like take us as Ricochet. Whoa, Ricochet's here, or like we saw recently. Oh, Motor City Machine Guns are here.
Yeah.
New, old faces in new places, kind of thing.
Yep.
But then after so long, then they get put into the system, and it's like, okay, they're just any other guys, right? So, but I mean, I I don't know. I don't like that. I hate that model. I'm not saying really a union would fix that, but some type
Yeah.
of situation would have been better than what they were doing. So, and
Yeah.
maybe back then, I mean, I guess probably the union would be the answer because unions were a little bit more organized and they weren't so political like they are now. Um, I think unions were like, hey, they are for the working man.
Yeah.
I think unions are more like, okay, well, we got to be with our political allies.
Yep.
And it's a little frustrating to watch sometimes. That's why I don't like unions. But anyways,
Yep.
but that's WrestleMania 2 and Jesse Ventura. So
Yeah. And then obviously with WrestleMania 2, it was like I said, it was in 3 venues in New York, Illinois, and California, which was kind of, they thought he was back then he was even crazy to pull off, but I mean, they did it
right.
with no with I mean, I don't want to say with no hassle on hindsight. But I don't think I mean, nowadays I don't think they probably could do that actually today, with the popularity that it's in. I think they could fill up 3 arenas at once if they wanted to. Um,
Yeah. It's a good chance, but it'd be a little logistic nightmare still, I think.
yeah.
Um, it's kind of amazing that they still, um, that they you really can't perform. That we're able to kind of get what get done back then. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
And then obviously, WrestleMania 3 comes along, biggest WrestleMania. This is kind of like the make or break Mania, whether it's going to go on for a
right.
4 or 5 or, so on and so forth. Cause, it was, WrestleMania 2 was kind of, it was successful, but it had its flaws. Like I said, three arenas at once and all that stuff. And, you know, they talk about on the episode how crazy it was to do that. A lot of the guys were, kind of like beat up because they had to travel again and do another show and stuff like that. So uh WrestleMania 3 comes. This is a make or break. Obviously they get all the A-list celebrities for this. I think like what do you call it? Did Aretha Franklin did the
Resurrector,
yeah
Franklin.
Alice Cooper was there. Um, obviously we can't forget we always got to say this. The reason why WrestleMania exists, Howard Finkel named it WrestleMania. They were gonna call it like
Oh yeah.
they're gonna call something like Muscle Fest or Dude Bro Beatdown or something crazy shit like that. And I don't remember the exact name that they floated around, but Franco was like, let's call it WrestleMania. And then that was so Bob Uecker, I can't forget, long time WWF contributor.
Yep.
So they brought out the big guns for WrestleMania 3. It was successful. We know the story. Slam the stinky giant, blah blah blah. Fast forward,
Blah blah
say your
blah.
prayers, eat
Yeah,
your
exactly.
vitamins, all that dumb shit. The guy like The Rock does. Say your prayers. Could you just hurry up and do your thing when you say your prayers and and you do the pose. That shit was fucking hilarious when he's holding the cross.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so shortly after that, you know, they talk about WWF's going down a little bit. Businesses that kind of crazy to think at the WrestleMania the wrestling business starts to decline a little bit on his end. But then obviously the drug scandals come into play. But one notable one that they brought up that I sort of knew about but didn't was the sex scandal, the ring boy scandal that I think it was like I think it said like 88 to 90 or 92 or something like that. Um, that was Mel Phillips. They bring him up in the episode. He was a WWF ring announcer. And he was accused of we'll say SAing
There you go.
multiple
I
boys.
like that.
Yeah, SAing multiple ring boys.
Essay. Yeah, I like that. I like that, Marco. That's
So
you're such a professional.
Listen, obviously, ring boys are they were the crew. They would build the ring up because the ring's in parts and stuff like that. Put the ropes on, put the the plywood down. So they would build the ring up, and at the end of the show, they would break the ring down. So that's what they would do. And there was rumblings and accusations of these boys. They're all, like I said, they were all underage. They were in trouble because I think they were underage children actually working too. So that's even more of a a problem anyway. But yeah, there was a bunch of higher ups. They implemented as well as, like I said, the ring announcer for was having their proverbial way with the ring boys and stuff like that. So that was brought. I think was that the first one that was brought up by Phil Mushnick? Was that the?
It has to be. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first scandal. I mean, because the steroid scandal doesn't happen really till a couple years after this. So, and and the only reason why the steroid scandal happens, of course, we'll talk about is Dr. George Zohorian, who was the doctor but he was a Pennsylvania state doctor, and he's the one, of course, like supposedly selling drugs to the wrestlers. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's the only reason why that comes to light. But yeah, and they ended up, I believe, selling out of court with one of the ring boys, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
A couple years later, and then of course, as we just discussed on Raw Down,
More recently, yes.
yes, that is coming back to light. More specifically with now the lawsuit includes not only Vince McMahon but Lyndon McMahon,
Yes.
WWE, and TKO, and it's guess lack of better word, I guess like a class action, somewhat of. I guess maybe you don't call it that,
No,
but it's
it's like
it's
they filed.
five plaintiffs basically, I
Yes,
believe.
John
So
Doe's. They're not naming any of the.
right,
They're not giving their names of the ring boys or anything like that. I think there's only one that they did, right? That like back then. I think it was. I think his
right.
name was Tom or something like that.
Yeah, Tom. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I
And
think they. I
I
think
think
they
he,
added.
yeah, they added an interview into the documentary, I believe,
Yeah,
too.
yeah. They
So
added Tom. Well, they added Linda McMahon because during that time, it was her and Vince that
right,
were giving the direction to like kind of discredit anything that Tom was saying about the abuse allegations and stuff like that. So I think that's why she's being brought into this recent one because she was as much as
negligence.
a lot of people. I think they talk about that on the Docuseries too. How much Linda was also a part of. She's a part of the business as well as her and Vince. You know,
Yep.
she talked about it. If the business failed, they both failed. That was they put all their money into it, all their life savings into the WWF and stuff like that. So she's as much, as responsible for it as he is, in that sense. But yeah, so that happens amongst, like you said, what's his Mel
Mel
Phillips.
Phillips.
I don't think they mentioned that he was also one of the abusers in the docuseries. I think maybe they
No,
have, maybe they did, they
no, because
didn't.
that's what Brett says he was a pedophile. He
Yeah,
called him a
yeah.
pedophile.
I mean, they just looking at like the art. I'm just like kind of looking up notes and stuff.
Yeah,
He was one of the ones that was playing in parts of that amongst other ones. They did name Pat Patterson too as well.
yeah,
R.I.P. Pat Patterson, but he was
yeah,
brought into it. Um, and there was a few other WWF at the time executives
right.
that were also bothering these kids. We'll say. Um,
Yes,
yeah,
and, and
that was a shock to me. I didn't I don't think I knew fully about that story at all. Like I didn't know that was like an actual like thing. I knew about the referee, the woman, stuff like that. Um, that was directly involved with Vince McMahon. Um, and that's it. But I never knew I don't think I ever knew about these ring boys. Did you know about the
yeah,
ring boys
yeah,
scandal?
I did. Um, I feel like maybe as like so during this time as well too. It's hitting like the talk shows like your Sally Jesse Raphael's, your Phil
That's right.
Donahue's, and I feel like maybe one time as a kid I didn't understand it, but I feel like one time as a kid like I was like, oh, they're talking WWF. Let me watch
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I started watching it. I have like a very faint memory of it. And my mom was like, "Yeah, no, we're not watching that. That's not wrestling. They're not really talking wrestling here." It's like okay, but I feel like as a kid, I remember it, and then of course it got brought up a lot. Um, you know, during especially like during the something to wrestle with era, which I know that show's still going
Yeah.
on, but
Yep.
whenever it was really hot, that show. Um, and then another thing that they talk about too, another scandal. There's a lot of sex scandals. It's not just ring boys too.
Yes.
Former WWF referee Rita Sheraton.
That's right.
She also she files a lawsuit against Vince McMahon for an alleged rape that occurred
Yes. Right.
in a limousine. And what was shocking to me right here, where Vince kind of, I feel like this is where Vince kind of slips up right here. He doesn't necessarily say that there was, you know, uh, he of course he denies that it was any type of essay. We'll say
Yeah.
like you say, um, uh, but he doesn't deny that there wasn't a relationship there.
No, he does. Yeah, that's right. He doesn't.
That really shocked me right there, and I feel like that's a potential slip up right there with Vince,
Yeah.
because we're talking early '80s, and we do know, of course, fast forward, Vince goes on to like Howard Stern, and he admits, this is like in late '90s when wrestling's crazy, and he admits that he's had extramarital affairs,
Yeah. Yeah.
things like that, and so we knew like that was the case, but I guess it's like, man, it's so important for this to talk about this, because this is like the breeding ground, I feel like, for what we see in 2023.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know,
Exactly. Yep.
and if you could go back and look at some of these claims that that they're defending themselves, like Vince is defending himself against. It's like the exact wording that he has today. It's like this. I'm gonna keep using this because this is what's working.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't change. Like if you see interviews of Vince in this documentary to what you see on Phil Donahue show 30 years ago, it's like almost the exact wording that he uses. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
He sticks to his story. That's one
Yeah.
thing you can say about
Yeah.
Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in that second episode, they did cover a lot. Like you said, they covered the steroid scandal, um, which obviously he ended up beating the allegations against steroid use. They also covered, like you said, they covered Rita Chatterton, and she was on she was a guest on this is like dating everything, but Geraldo
Araldo, yeah,
Rivera. They
yeah,
did show
yeah.
like a clip of that, of
Forget about
her
Araldo,
talking
yeah.
about the you know Vince McMahon, essaying,
Right.
um, and then obviously at the same time, like we said, we have the child abuse. So like, look, steroid scandals happening,
Mm,
starting up anyway. You know, the Rita Chatterton and her allegations, the Ring Boy allegations,
mm,
and this is like obviously late '80s, going into the '90s and stuff like that. Jesse the Body Ventura also had a civil suit against Vince McMahon for, I think it was like royalties, for his commentary and stuff like that. I think that he won. He ended up winning against Vince McMahon. Um, there was a lot of stuff happening to Vince in the WWE back in the late '80s, early '90s that people really don't talk about as much. Kind of gets
yeah.
glossed over.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad this docu series kind of brought that back up to light. Like, holy shit, this is like kind of like a pattern of, you know, there's been a pattern with this company. It's
Yeah.
surrounded in controversy. They didn't
Mhm.
bring up one of the things that I thought they would have brought up. Superfly Jimmy Snuka. You have
Yeah,
to watch
well,
that Dark Side of the Ring
they
episode for
but
that.
no,
But
well, they touched on it a little bit, and was Tony Atlas brought it up, and so my wife was watching it, and and
I
she
don't
was
remember
not a
him bringing that up.
very, very, very little, but they were talking about how they were um not very nice to women, shall we say?
Yes.
Uh, and they just kind of had their way, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and they touched on like a little bit with Snuka, like how we don't know what exactly transpired, and that I think they ended up kind of, it was like maybe a minute or two they talked about it. It wasn't very
Yeah.
much, but yeah, I really got to look at the dark side of the ring, because but really that's the whole thing too. Like what's going to happen with that? Because I could guarantee you, with all this stuff coming out right now, you know, right before Stuka's passing, he was like going on trial.
Yeah. That's right.
And
For
the
the
whole
death.
big thing that they were trying to see if he was fit to go on trial,
Yeah.
because he was like nearing his death.
Yeah.
And of course, then he ends up passing. But I wonder if they're going to still some way try to look at this investigation and put that on Vince in some way, not criminally, but civilly, like with the families.
Yeah, it's
That's
possible.
something that can be possible. That you have to take into consideration. Vince is in a world pain coming up here.
I mean, especially with if you watch that Dark Side of the Ring episode, it's his Superfly Jimmy Snuka's episode, and the stuff that he allegedly did for Superfly, it's like covering up his girlfriend's death and all that stuff, and paying people off, and covering pretty much for Superfly in that time when that happened and stuff like that. So a lot of shady business and stuff like that. And I mean, they could, if they really want to do it, they'll do it. If it's especially if it's a federal investigation, they can pin whatever they want on him. If they have enough evidence for it anyway, they could definitely do that. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't. They really want to stick it to him. But I think that actually, I mean, obviously, the end of that episode, Hulk Hogan leaves because the steroid trial happens. Hulk Hogan has to testify. He ends up, swerving the what do you call it? The prosecution.
Yeah.
And saying, I never had it. Whatever. He basically just, lets McMahon go free, pretty much.
Well, yeah, he says one thing to them in the before.
Oh, and then before interview, he says like, I'll say everything that you need to hear. And then when he gets on the stand,
they were ready to drop the leg on him.
Yeah, he was a smoking gun. He was the the guy that was gonna finally put the the nail in the coffin for Vince McMahon. He comes out and says, "Well, no, you never gave it to me. I never anything I did on it was on my own accord and all this stuff." So that was kind of like, even though they weren't seeing eye to eye, Hogan and Vince McMahon at the time, it was kind of like a nod to like, I'm doing this for you, now I'm heading to WCW pretty much.
That whole relationship is so interesting to me, dude, though. Really, it is. Like, man, to be a fly on the wall just on all their conversations from 84 to 94,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then when he comes back and all that stuff, like, man, his nickname was for Hogan is Monster, right? That's what he calls him. He goes, Monster. That's what I need you to do, Monster.
Yeah.
Or Terry. Big Terry. Yeah, I don't know, right?
I wonder if that was the name of one of his things. Probably. It probably was. Probably was. One of his toys named Monster, dude. Guaranteed. I'm almost 99.9% sure one of his.
He has to have an Andre one too.
Yeah. But he probably didn't name him. Like you said, Monster was probably one of them. Named after Hogan. The Giant was probably one of them or some shit like that. Yeah, he's a sick man. But anyway, that finishes that episode.
He had one that was flaccid. It was the dead man.
That'd have been funny, dude, if he had something like that. Holy shit. So let's skip on over to episode 3, which is called the Screwjob. Obviously, everyone knows. We may not. I mean, they didn't really say anything that was groundbreaking and news and noteworthy. But, obviously, he beats the trial. And Hogan kind of, I forgot actually, reading these notes. He did kind of throw every other wrestler under the bus. And that they do. Hogan was like, they do say everyone does steroids, but I do them, but Vince never gave them to me. I got them myself, so that's how Vince got off in that sense. But obviously, the new generation kicks in because Hogan's gone. Macho Man's on his way out the door almost. So all the older generation guys are moving on. So obviously Vince is looking for the newer, more, you're going to come into a clean image now. You can't go to another steroid guy, a big muscular dude, like a WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation type guy.
They showed those clips of those dudes, like they were like
Ico Pro, all that shit.
And they're doing like tricks and stuff like
the
routines. I was like, oh my god, what is this?
So bad. But yeah, so they're looking for a cleaner image, and who better to bring a company into the golden goose clean image, which is Mr. Bret the Hitman Hart, former tag team member of the Hart Foundation, he's
You
on a
know,
solo career now,
if your
going in
kids are
strong.
watching me on Saturday morning, they're probably doing all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so looks to Bret Hart to be that beacon of hope, like that. Like you're gonna be that main, you squeaky clean, no steroids,
Mhm.
good looking guy, great champion, all that type of stuff. So he uses Bret Hart to kind of get back into the good graces. But actually during this time, I mean, WWF still not doing really that great as far as like sales and stuff like that, and money. WCW's kind of
They're
you know
kicking their
kind of
ass.
tracking upward with the
Mhm.
acquisition of Hulk Hogan. Um, you know, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash will soon leave, and WWF, or Vince McMahon's looking to you know create some new stars and stuff like that. So they usher in the workman's era where there's different fucking people that are working, like the Duke the Dumpster and fucking you know race car Holly and fucking Repo Man
TL
and all.
Hopper.
Yeah,
TL Hopper, baby. Which he was
the
also known as
electrician and all this
Dirty.
stuff.
Yeah, he was known as Dirty White Boy in
Yeah,
Memphis.
fucking hilarious. Yeah, so WCW is obviously with Ted Turner. You know the story. They hate each other. Vince McMahon, the two rich guys that hate each other, and they went into full head into the wrestling business,
Wrestling business.
as Ted Turner would say, and kind of kicked the shit out of Vince McMahon in the process.
Yeah.
In ratings, obviously, Raw starts up. Um, they hire Eric Bischoff. WCW does. He's a producer for. He's a network producer for. Was it for? What company was it for? Was it for
AWA.
Turner? No, but wasn't he like a just a TV
Yeah, he was
executive
just
dude for like
no
Turner or some shit like that?
he was just an announcer. He was C-list at the announcer.
But I think
But
he was. Did he get a job as a like after that? Did he get a job as like a network guy or no?
no. He
I know
so
he
he
did sales and shit. I know he talked
yeah
about that, like him doing sales and
yeah
all
he
that
had
stuff
he
for
had
the.
the Ninja Star game or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
And he tries to well, he sells it to Vern Gagne, like he's trying to get some ad space.
yeah,
And Vern, I guess, likes him and he says, well, why don't you come work for me?
yeah.
And so he does sales syndication for AWA. So
That's right. Yeah,
he's trying to sell like the programming syndication for AWA to. And
yeah,
then he becomes the announcer, and then of course AWA folds. He actually does a tryout with WWF.
yeah. And then that's actually you can see that.
Yeah, and then of course then he ends up getting a job with WCW as like the C list. He's like on WCW Pro or something like that, like
Yeah, I think
1 o'clock in the morning.
I think he was. I think at the time I think he did mention on his podcast he was doing like you know behind the scenes like TV production or some shit like television production for.
I think that was all with AWA.
Okay, so yeah, so he had that
Yeah,
background. I think when he came into power for WCW, that's what really put them in the forefront was his vision of television production for WCW Monday Nitro.
right.
The way it was presented
Well,
really.
here's my personal opinion on Eric Bischoff. I think he was such a great salesman that he sold his way to that
That
job for
too. Yeah,
WCW.
that too.
Like
That's
like I don't doubt that he didn't have like some like production background, but he never was like he never went to college
oh yeah,
for
yeah. No, he
production.
was more like he had the vision, and obviously he
Yeah,
had the people around him
yeah.
to do the
So
work.
so that's I think because he was such a great salesman is how he got that job with WCW.
Yeah,
The executive producer role. So they do keep him on a short leash. They don't talk about this in documentary, but I know they
yeah,
keep him on a short leash at first. And then, as he's, like you said, as his vision starts growing and he starts getting more and more power, they start, loosening the reins, so to speak, with him. But yeah, uh, it's very interesting. Eric Bischoff, as much as I despise him nowadays for some of his takes. We don't have. He's still very important to the history of wrestling. Because of his vision. Was it Foley like ideas that he came up with the cusp? Like like the NWO, the whole NWO thing is a storyline based on what was going on in Japan.
Yeah,
He just took it and he just took it and made it better, basically.
Yeah.
But without that, you don't have Attitude Era. You don't like it's like a domino effect,
Yeah.
If you don't have Eric Bischoff, there's no telling where pro wrestling ends up at,
Yeah, and then
as much as I hate to give him credit on that.
It's one of those weird things because it's like, at around that time, like 92, 93, you got ECW as well, Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Starting to, starting up and, making a name and stuff like that and getting like a lot of older, wrestlers and stuff like that, Terry Funk and all those dudes. And then you could say like he may have taken a lot of stuff from ECW too, as far as, they were all taken from ECW pretty much.
They all were. WWF was.
Yeah.
They took the WCW took the luchadors from.
Oh man, yeah, they
from ECW.
They did have like that connection with with Japan,
AAA, yeah,
AAA, and and with
Japan,
New Japan and all that stuff, and so they had those connections. But yeah, as far as the new luchadors go, yeah, that they definitely Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, they were all in ECW, and then
which by the way, we need a good Psychosis figure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
God, let's make that happen, Steve.
Yeah, so this episode obviously goes through the curtain call, with when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall are leaving. You have the big hugging session between him, Triple H, Shawn Michaels at the end of that Madison Square Garden show. The Click, and then obviously they say that killed kayfabe and all that stuff.
So this is the part where I have to explain what kayfabe.
Before you get into it, did they talk about Vince McMahon didn't really talk on this episode that much. Only really when the Montreal Screwjob came up, they had his thoughts on that. But other than this stuff, like the WCW stuff,
you're right.
Call, they didn't really get his take on. He probably didn't give a shit personally. He didn't. He killed kayfabe anyway. When fucking he killed all the territories, so he didn't give a shit. I don't think he really cared.
So my wife was watching it with me, and so I'm having to explain so when we talk about this is not for us,
yeah, it's for the masses. It's for the
masses. So my wife is a part of the masses. She doesn't know this stuff, so I'm explaining what kayfabe is, and I'm just trying to do get her to realize what's happening, and so she's like, "Well, what if this is a work?" She starts kind of spiraling with it, and I'm that's a good point,
That's what we do with everything. When you're a wrestling fan, everything's a work, pretty much. That's what happens.
So I thought that was funny, but this is a particular interesting episode for me to watch with her because she's understanding the whole Screwjob situation and just
was it a work?
Yeah.
Was it real? Was it fake? So people, I mean, I think it was still real, dude. I don't think it was fucking fake at all. But I mean, there's really not much to talk. I mean, we could definitely talk about the comments and stuff from Vince and Bret Hart on that. But yeah, the curtain call happens. Triple H gets the fucking shit under the stick, pretty much. Luckily, 6-Pac or 1-2-3 Kid was not in attendance because he probably would have been the one to get that. I think he would have been the scapegoat.
Yeah.
If he was in that session, I don't know. I forget why he wasn't there. Was he injured? Or something?
He was injured. Yeah, he was injured. No. He wasn't injured. He just got busted with a wellness policy violation.
Yeah, that's right. So he wasn't. Yeah, I think I still think if he was a part of that session, it would have been him. That would have been fucking.
And one thing people I've heard because I've heard this from Sean Waltman, and Sean Waltman is a great human being, by the way. If you ever get a chance to meet him, he's awesome. And I believe what he says. One thing they don't talk about, and then people don't talk about in general. Sean Waltman's brought this up. Sean Waltman was the catalyst that got Scott Hall and Kevin Nash to start seeking those deals with WCW, because Sean Waltman was his agent was Barry.
Horowitz?
No, not Barry
Out of the
Horowitz.
back?
I can't think of his name right now. Barry something, anyways. But he was kind of known to be dealing to making big deals with wrestlers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he's the one that starts seeking out that deal for him with WCW. And I think maybe Bischoff says, well, okay, if I can get Sean Waltman, can I get maybe some other guys? That's when they start kind of probing. So I think Waltman kind of thinks that, the whole wellness violation was also really a punishment for seeking all these deals. That was his way of having a punishment. So I find it pretty interesting with that. So Waltman's really the catalyst of everything.
Kind of funny. Yeah, it's kind of funny that Vince McMahon anyway, did this to the territories back in the 80s, but then when it's done to him,
so
he's gonna act out and be,
that's another thing my wife brings up. She's like, well, okay, so she's sitting back and like, okay, so he did all this in the 80s and now it's getting done to him. Like, so what are you gonna do? So the problem with WCW, and look, we can get into all that's could be a whole nother podcast, but one of the big problems with WCW is they don't create new stars except for Bill Goldberg, of course.
So, that's pretty much it. They tried David Flair.
Goldberg, Jericho, and you got Goldberg, Jericho, Mysterio, Booker T, and pretty much and Page, Diamond Dallas Page. Those are the guys that they created.
Like I said, they tried with David Flair and stuff like that, and they tried with the Master P and the No Limit Soldiers.
Oh, dude, don't even bring up my boy Master P like that.
The Demon they tried to as well. The Kiss Demon, or what was his name? They tried with that.
Dale Torborg.
What was his name? The Mortal Kombat characters.
They tried to do it with Mortis and Glacier.
Glacier.
Oh,
Mortis.
I saw something recently. Mortis actually had a tryout match with WWF.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you see that pop up recently? I was like, whoa, what is this?
Oh yeah. If anyone doesn't know, WWE on their YouTube channel has a WWE Vault channel where you can watch, like, they're starting to upload like shit that you've never seen before, like that you didn't know existed. You're like, holy shit. But yeah, I'm glad they're starting to do that type of stuff. I see that floating around a lot. That video. He did have a tryout. Obviously he wasn't in it, but
he wasn't straight enough, I believe. That's the problem.
Yeah, that is true.
Watch the Chris Kanyon episode.
Oh, Kanyon, dude. All right.
Who's better than Kanyon?
Oh, Kanyon was sick. Yeah. I was a fan of Kanyon. But anyway, current call happens, blah, 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 all that shit. WCW's killing WWF. Then, everyone's leaving, someone, we talked about him at the beginning, Bret Hart being that, that beacon, that main champion for WWF, that clean slate. He's kind of getting, he's getting frustrated. He wants more money. He's getting ready to leave. And, if you're a wrestling fan, the Montreal Screwjob and everything that happened, he wanted to.
Well,
the story's convoluted in a sense where, we don't know if, he said he was going to drop it the next night on Monday Night Raw. Vince McMahon didn't trust him. He thought he was just going to take the title and, run with it and show up on WCW with it. I don't think Bret Hart would have done that. I think he, I don't know him personally, but he seems like he's a man of his word. And I don't think he would have ran to WCW and, he seemed like, if you know Bret Hart and you're a fan of Bret Hart, he's professional wrestling, fucking by the book. Like, perfects his craft, like in ring, outside the ring, like he is wrestling. He is professional wrestling. Like, and if I'm gonna believe one person and say, like, and they tell me, hey, I would never do that to this title, I would never disgrace this title. I will drop it to you. I will drop it the next night. I just don't want to do it in my hometown. Can we just shake on that or whatever? Obviously that didn't happen. Vince McMahon takes matters into his own hands, does the Montreal screw job. Doesn't want obviously Bret Hart was like, I don't want to do it in Montreal. Please don't make me do it there. I'll do it the next night, no problem. Why do you think why do you think Vince McMahon did not trust him? Was it because of everyone jumping ship to
Yeah,
WCW?
and
So he's kind of like fucking scared that it was gonna happen, but why wouldn't he trust
because
Bret Hart?
he would. I mean, I think he saw what was going on. He saw the writing on the wall, and it was like, this is what I did 20 years ago or whatever it was. I guess it was like 15 years ago, but
Yeah.
at the time, and it's like, I can't let that happen, and but just imagine. Of course, then you also have, let's go before all this happens. A year prior, Medusa shows up on WCW television with the women WWF women's title, throws it in the trash can,
Yep.
and and Eric, again, I have to give him credit. Like, he has great ideas at the time, especially of, like, oh, you don't have to watch that stuff because you got, Shawn Michaels throws a karate kick to beat Goldust, so you don't even have to watch that tonight.
Yeah.
Just stay tuned to Nitro, and things like that. So, it's a genius idea, to figure out what's going on, to tell people what's going on, so they stick and watching Nitro. And of course, of course, the start of the NWO, all that stuff. But I think, Vince is scared. I mean, and I think he had a good reason to be. Uh, you know, I over the years, as I've whenever the first heard about the screw job, I'm like, yeah, screw Brett. You're leaving. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Fine. You're leaving. That's that's not how you do things. You hear that narrative, but then when you hear Brett's point of view of things, and I think the biggest thing, that documentary, that sit down of between Shawn and Brett that they did, maybe like 15 years ago or something.
Oh
too.
yeah, that was awesome.
With Jim Ross leading it. You hear things, and it's like, man, I think my attitude has changed on the situation, and where it's like, I think Brett was right in this situation, and I guess that'll be a never-ending battle. But Brett has to look out for himself at the end of the day, especially when you have in your contract that you have creative control. I mean,
Yep.
Vince he could have sued Vince for breach of contract right there.
He could have, yeah. And that goes to show you another side of his character, that he didn't do that.
No.
Like, he's not a bad, like, it seems like he's not a bad dude. Like, why would you not trust him?
That's why I appreciate Brett, especially nowadays. No matter people are, oh, he's so bitter, and I've talked about this all the time, but man, he tells it like it is. And
you need that. We need that now.
You need that, like, because people are such full of shit that they're looking out for themselves. But Brett is just a stand-up guy, and he's gonna tell it as he sees it.
Yeah.
It may not be correct, but he's definitely not lying.
Yeah, it's correct to him, and that's
that's what matters,
Yeah.
in the situation. So I think there will always be heat between him and Vince and Brett.
Yeah.
Especially, I guess, we could get into, I guess, the whole Hart tragedies as well. So
yeah, I mean, he obviously, after the Montreal screw job, they have that.
Oh, well, we could get into the Attitude Era too. I'm sorry.
He knocks him out. Vince McMahon goes back there after, ballsy enough of Vince McMahon to go back and try to apologize. I guess I don't know why the fuck he would do that.
And that's the thing this is one thing that I was surprised about, is you always heard of, like, Vince saying, like, oh, I gave him a shot. He gave him a shot.
Yeah.
But apparently that's not how it went down.
He
and I'd always heard that. Yeah, I always heard, like, Brett was, like, in the shower, and he was
Vince
like,
McMahon came in. It was like, hey, what are you doing with this?
and
hang out.
Yeah, well, I think Brett was in the shower, and he was just trying to talk to Brett.
Brett was like,
Brett was like, if you don't get the fuck out of here by the time I'm done with this. I'm
Yeah.
kicking your ass. And
That never happened, I guess.
and so yeah, he never left. And
Just know they
apparently
quit. Yeah.
apparently Brett dries off, puts a towel around his waist, and they go to blows.
Yeah, they scuffle a little bit. He said they locked up. Like he said, they on the documentary, he said they locked up, sort of like how you would in
Yeah.
wrestling. He said he fucking snuck an uppercut in there
Yeah.
and just fucking dropped him,
It was
dude.
just perfect.
One of the things we didn't point out was that earlier list that we seen that we talked about, that who was going to be on the documentary. It said Undertaker wasn't on it.
Right.
He was fucking on it on the
Yeah, he
whole
was on there.
thing.
He was on pretty much the whole thing. Yeah.
And
So-
he gave his sentiments on that. He said he was against it, dude. He hated the fact that they did that to Brett, dude. Like he was, that shouldn't have been done. And when they knew what it was, when they were said like, clear the, Vince is coming, clear the locker rooms out. They're clear the, like, I guess obviously they're all share a locker room. So like when Sean's, they're all getting changed and shit like that.
Mhm.
When they say, "Hey, clear the locker room," I think they all know it's
Hit the
fucking,
bricks, pal.
it's like, hey, it's like, Vince is coming in. He's gonna talk to Brett. I think they all knew like a scuffle was gonna happen. Something was gonna happen. Some physical altercation. And I don't think they wanted. I think the wrestlers knew like to stay out of it. Just let it happen. Just so
Well, and they even show that the famous scene from Wrestling with Shadows where
it's you gotta live with this. Brett's wife at the time.
Oh yeah. That, and then also Brett's, he's like undoing his boots, and he's asked Sean. He goes, "Did you have anything to do with that, Sean?" And you can hear Sean. Oh, I swear to God, I swear to God, I didn't hear it.
I had no clue.
And, it's just like
I don't know if he did. Triple H won't say he knew. I think.
Oh, Triple H knew. Yeah, he 100% knew, because Triple H is the one that says, he's famously for saying, if he doesn't want to do business, then fuck him. We'll do business for him.
Yeah, that's right.
And they've always said that line, that they've always used that. They've used that in, like, I think in video games before, and comic books, and things like that. Like, where Triple H is saying, they're like retelling the screw job.
Yeah,
like in those kind of forms. Because I've seen it before in different aspects, and it's a pretty famous line at this point. And so, Triple H definitely knew. 100%.
I wonder if that was a way for him to get back into Vince's good graces after the whole click thing and all that stuff. And
I think
obviously Generation X is gonna start.
Right.
It's pretty much forming.
Well, he wins the King of the Ring that in that the June
after
prior.
that, yeah.
Well, no,
before
not
the year that he was supposed to win.
Right. But before the screw job occurs in November, and he wins it.
Right.
He wins it in June. He also has that good feud with Mick Foley, Mankind.
Yeah.
And then of course then D-Generation X happens.
Yeah.
I think I think it definitely helped for sure, because then if you look going into the spring after WrestleMania 14, and he starts running DX, but he's given the ball, like he says in that promo. So I think
Sean know. Do you think Sean?
Oh
knew?
yeah, Sean 100% knew. Yeah.
Do you think it was a thing where like
Sean had to know, because he's the one that had to put the sharpshooter on?
That's true. Damn.
I think Sean knew. Of course, Earl Hebner knew. I think Gerald Briscoe knew. Pat Patterson knew. Vince knew, of course. Triple H and Sean. I think those are the only people that knew what was going on. I don't even think Pritchard knew. Undertaker didn't know. Foley, I know Foley almost quit.
Yeah, like I said, they were all pretty much on Bret Hart's side.
He almost quit.
The sentiment was like, that's not how the business is supposed to be run. Like, you're supposed to at least come to an agreement, especially with something like that. It's like, you had this guy carrying a title, being your, face of the company for so long, and you're just going to treat him like that because he, you gave him the blessing to go to WCW, but in your mind, you're like, you have this weird thing where it's like, oh my God, he's going to fucking take the title with him and deface it or some shit like that. But I honestly think Brett would have, like you said, I'll drop it the next night on Raw, and then you'll never see me again. Like, I think
Yeah.
he would have. I don't think he would have taken the title to fucking WCW. I don't think he. I don't want to say like even Vince McMahon once said like Bret Hart was the true like WWF champion. Like he looked at Bret Hart as like that's what a champion looks like.
Hmm.
Do you remember him saying that or no? In like
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
interviews, he's like when he looked at Bret Hart, they're like that's what he's seen as a champion, like clean cut,
Right.
wore the belt as it was like an actual, not a prop, like it was an actual championship that he
Yeah.
was there to represent. So
And
like,
I think Brett has more to do with growing the business internationally than I would say than Hulk Hogan did.
you're probably right about that.
You know, I
Yeah,
mean, like those fans in Europe and even into like I know they wrestled a lot in South Africa, wrestled a good bit in Australia. Like they're starting to
yeah,
expand over there.
yep,
But like those European tours, like Brett was over
yeah,
huge,
yep, yep,
huge.
yeah. You got to think it's family, obviously the family name. A lot of wrestlers from all over the world fought in Stampede Wrestling too. So like, yeah, no, you're probably right. He probably was like a big part of that, international appeal for the WWF at the time.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I mean, Screwjob happens. Obviously, controversy continues for a more. This is more internal controversy, not so much external
Mhm.
controversy.
Right.
Um,
But it's
but then,
important to talk about because is it like the poster says, is he a madman? He's pulling the strings,
yeah, is he
that
is
kind of thing.
so for me? If we're gonna grade it so far, every episode up until episode 4, which is I mean, this is the Attitude episode, which we're going to talk about now. It's him. It's not Mr. McMahon. it's him acting on his own accord. He's
Yeah.
right now he is Vince McMahon, the business owner, making decisions for
Well,
his company up
and I
until the Attitude Era is where we're gonna start going. Okay, is it Mr. McMahon the character, or is it? But up until now, it's I'm saving my fucking company. I'm
well,
Vince
and
McMahon.
it's because of the screw job. The screw job is the birth of the Vince McMahon character, the TV
Yeah, pretty
character.
much. Yep.
I
Yep.
mean, he's making appearances a little bit here and there as like the owner. Like you remember before that, about 2 months before prior to this, that's when Stone Cold hits the stunner on him for the first time.
Yep. That's well. I mean, we could
And
just
and and he,
hop into it.
and yeah, and he's like the owner of the company. They actually say, "Oh, he's the owner of the company."
Yeah.
But then the screw job happens, and you're like, "Whoa!" And then it's Brett Screws Brett interview and the birth of
Yeah.
Attitude. So
I think he's still. I think on that episode too. Before we close that out, he did say he still, you know, holds that same sentiment. It's basically just like I had to do what was best for the business, like my business, like. And Bret Hart was like, obviously, that was the best thing he's ever done in his career was just fucking knock Vince McMahon, knock Vince McMahon out pretty much. He's like, that's the best punch he's ever thrown.
yeah,
Like, he's like, obviously he's super proud of it. But like I said, that leads us into the Attitude Era, which is episode 4, Attitude. We don't have to dive much into this because
Mhm.
the story, blah blah. I mean, they do talk extensively about the women, how they're
right,
treated,
right.
like mimicking what's happening at the time in the 90s, the Jerry Springer show, like you said, Sally Jesse Raphael, Ricky Lake, all those type of like,
Mhm.
morning talk show, like trash television. They're kind of taking that and putting it on, WWF with the, you're trying to get your intelligence salted, that shit. Wish I had the drop.
We're trying to get your intelligence
Yeah,
insulted.
so it's starting to get a little bit more edgy. Obviously with Stone Cold, flipping the bird and swearing and stuff on TV. The Rock. You get the Nation of Domination. Pushing like the racial angle. So they're pretty much like doing they're reflecting. That's what wrestling does, right? It reflects. I mean, it reflects what's happening in the world, but obviously you're not. It's not going political. It's not going religious. It's just taking those kind of like scenarios and throwing them into the mix there. Back in the Attitude Era, they were literally taking shit from the from the headlines and putting it into wrestling. So you knew what they were talking about. It wasn't like there was no like guessing on what it was. It
Right.
was like,
The Val Venus.
yeah, like I mean,
Choppy PP,
yeah, we kind of skipped it, but with the with the Gulf War
Gulf
and stuff
War.
like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
back
yeah,
in
yeah.
episode, what was it, 2, I
I
think.
think it was 2. Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
talk about that with Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter and the Iraqi sympathizer, and so they're
Uh,
kind of mimicking. But then that was seen as taboo. It was like, what the fuck you doing? This is a real thing. Real people dying. How are you translating this to fresh? So again, that goes to Vince McMahon's.
I honestly, like, I don't. Maybe I'll get some heat for this. I don't really have a problem with that, honestly. Like, what's the difference of you making a movie about, you know, um, about some type of warfare going on,
That's
between,
true.
what's the difference between that, a movie? I'm trying to think of a movie that that you would have, but I mean, you can even go like look at like movie World Trade Center, right? I
Yeah,
mean, even though it's it's telling real events, what's happening, but uh, it's still a movie. It's still adding drama to it. Um,
yeah,
I think that's what people have an issue with with pro wrestling is
yeah,
like when they see that they're like, whoa, 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 we can't do like real stuff. We got to do fake stuff,
yeah, definitely.
So
Do they? Yeah, over the edge. Was it Chris? What episode is it? Crispin was.
I think it's the last episode.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. So so I thought it was. I was like, did they skip it? But no. All right. So yeah, 4th episode. They talk about the Attitude Era. They talk about how the ladies are treated during the Attitude Era and stuff like that. Trish Stratus is on there. She talks about pretty much they did what they had to do. They talk about Sable. That's another scandal that pops up as well. Sable ends up leaving the company and then suing the company for allegations of abuse within the company and stuff like that. Ends up, I think she won the suit,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
they
Well,
settled out or some
they
shit like
settled.
that.
Yeah, settled out,
Um,
and then of
then
course
comes
she ends up
back to
coming
work for
back.
them, which
Yeah.
is fucking crazy in its own right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is where they start. The next episode is when they start talking about the family business and how the family gets involved. Shane, Stephanie, Linda. But before we leave the Attitude episode, because we don't have to dive deep into it. Um, we get to actually hear from the horse's mouth about one incident, obviously on May 23rd, 1999,
Yeah.
over the edge. Owen Hart, you know, descending from the rafters and, having a mishap on the way down. We actually get to hear, you know, from Vince McMahon his thoughts on it, and yeah, not the best look
This is where
for Vinnie
this is where
Mac up to this
this is
point.
where the gaslighting starts right here for me. Vince McMahon's gaslighting everybody. Um, yeah, and for me personally, like this whole incident, it affects me a little personally because Over the Edge 1999, my birthday is May 24th. And one thing that my mom asked, hey, what do you want for your birthday? Of course, 13, about to turn 13-year-old rabid wrestling fan. I'm like, I want, and getting pay-per-views was special back then. Like we didn't get
Yeah,
them. I was like, can I get this wrestling pay-per-view? Like I wanted that as my wrestling gift. I mean, one of my birthday gifts. So we did it. And, it was a whole ordeal. If you remember that from pay-per-views, you have to go to get the box, rent the box, and then you
yep,
got to bring it home, and you got to hook it up, and then then you pay for the thing, and then you go bring the box back on Monday.
yeah,
It
yep,
was a whole big thing. So we did it, and we're watching it, and they show just like how they do it. They do the cutaway, and I'm just sitting there, remember just playing with my wrestling figures, kind of mimicking what's going on, trying to build my cards, whatever what's going on, and yeah, and they I remember like it was like kind of a weird thing, and they show the thing with Godfather and of course Blue Blazer / Owen Hart, and then they don't show the match, and then it just goes to the next match, and you're almost like, whoa, what's going on here? And then that's whenever, of course, unfortunately Jim Ross has to announce.
Yeah.
And man, poor Jim Ross, man. Like,
And
put that
Lawler, dude.
and
They're
Lawler,
just
yeah,
they're just like,
yeah.
holy shit. Like
And
Lawler, you can tell the look on his face, like
well,
it's not looking good.
yeah,
Pretty much that's what
because
he's saying.
Lawler runs over. He's besides
Yeah, because
the
Ross was by
referee.
himself, right? And then Jerry the King Lawler comes into the
Yeah, because
cage
Lawler
review.
runs over there to help the
Yeah,
situation.
that's right. Yeah.
Now, one thing that apparently that they talk about is that it said that the wrestlers had to wrestle with, like, there was like a blood stain on there.
Yeah, so that's where this is where the controversy comes in,
Right.
because they're saying, obviously, Sunday Night Heat was before Over the Edge. Gangrel was out there. Did the blood spot? He does it. He used to do the blood spot. He drinks the blood. Does a Triple H.
Yeah, and then and then they have the bloodbath as well
Yeah.
too. So
Um.
so I don't know, but one thing that did happen, I know for sure, is some of the I don't know if it's 2x4s or 4x4s that they have underneath there. Some of them broke on impact.
Oh, jeez.
And they didn't talk about this.
Yeah, he hit
And
real hard.
and if you watch, because I did when the network came out, I did go back and watch it, and I kind of kicked myself for doing it because it was like I was like I didn't finish it, but all the way through. But I've never gone back and watched it since then, though. But if you watched in that corner, they never do any spots because there's a gap in the flooring there.
Yeah.
It's broken. So that I mean, yeah, the blood spot may be kind of overhyped in some regard, but maybe there was maybe people were focused on the wrong spot. Maybe there was a spot in the ring. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I don't really want to, but I'd have to really look and see. Maybe it's a different spot that people are talking about. The one they show the like the Hardys touching the mat after they get bloodbath on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Regardless, I mean, you still had a man die in the ring.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
The other thing too is, I mean, there was a clip that they show a clip of The Rock walking through that I mean, his match is over and he's like holding his shoulder or something like that, and he goes to like rest on it, but then he goes like kind of like pulls away real quick, like he almost like he puts his hand on that red spot. I'm not sure if you remember that, but he's like he's leaving the ring and he goes like this and he just kind of like jumps away real quick, like brings his arm back up and just kind of like walks off. I think there was blood there, dude. I'm not gonna. I'll just say it. I don't think it was. I mean, there's probably bloodbath stuff there, but I think his blood was there.
So.
I think his blood was in the ring.
Yeah.
You don't hit that hard from that height, and there's no blood that comes out.
Right. Because I've heard of how like Jeff Jarrett, God bless Jeff Jarrett, and he had to see all that, to see his best friend go through all that, but he saw what Owen looked like, and there was something. There had to be something in there.
Yeah, you just don't hit that hard.
But like even though there's absolutely nothing, again, you had one of your teammates, one of your friends, that died in the ring like that. It's just
I said, you just don't. I mean, like I said, I don't know. I don't study any type of like falls and deaths, and I'm not that type of person, but I would imagine if you fall from that height and you hit that hard, there has to be bloodshed. I mean, you can fall and hit your head on the ground and get a cut and your head will bleed. Like, imagine falling from that height and doing that. So I think there was blood, which leads me to the next comments from everybody saying it wasn't. Obviously, Bruce Pritchard's on there saying, that was blood from the bloodbath from earlier. That wasn't any of Owen's blood.
Bruce Pritchard. I don't know.
Yeah, and then Vince McMahon. Should we just jump to the Vince McMahon comments?
Yes.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on what he said about that like him continuing the show?
It's
And
just
what he would
cold-hearted. It's
and how he
cold-hearted.
would be in that situation if it happened to him.
It's cold-hearted, man. Like you can't say what you would do in one situation,
in
and yet
hindsight, yeah,
in
especially.
hindsight, yeah, especially in hindsight, and be like, well, if it was me, let's just do it. You have to have some shred of empathy. It just I think this is where you start seeing this blending of the Mr. McMahon character into who the real person is.
Yeah,
He's just cold, heartless, doesn't have empathy, you know. And then, of course, you hear other stories where he's helped other people out.
yeah, of course, yeah. He's a
Uh,
father figure and all that
yeah,
type of
yeah.
stuff to
But
people.
this is where the blending of the two occur for me, and um, and even to this day, as he's talking about what's happening, then he talks about that it was an accident, that the rigging company messed up, and they had faulty equipment. They sue the which I didn't know this, that they sued the company and they won. Years later, of course, Martha Hart sues WWF, WWE at the time, as well too, and of course she wins. But she has some things to say as well. Martha Hart does.
Yeah, she does.
She talks about the Netflix Mr. McMahon documentary series portrays the death of my husband Owen Hart as a mere accident. It also allows the disgraced former owner and CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment, Vince McMahon, to claim that Owen's death wasn't our fault. Nothing could be further from the truth. The real truth is that on May 23rd, 1999, out of a desire to cut costs and achieve a quick release effect that a rigging expert specifically warned against, WWE hired unqualified riggers to arrange a stunt in which Owen was to rappel from the rafters during a wrestling event. As a result, the riggers used incorrect equipment that caused Owen to fall to his death. It was pure negligence that killed my husband. uh, you know so she's she's saying, like, and she's still fighting for Owen, which I appreciate. And I take a lot of offense to the fact that people just kind of go after her a little bit, especially now that she's with AEW, and AEW's using the rights. So I mean, yes, is it what we want to we want to remember Owen as in his WWF days? Most of us never really knew him in the New Japan days. I get that, but man, at least we get like something of Owen
Yeah.
nowadays,
Yep.
because for the longest it was nothing.
Yeah.
And I especially love that now that they're using the Owen Hart Cup as a way to further storylines. The winner receives a title match at All In now, and I think that's very important. But at least we get something of Owen nowadays. So
I mean, yeah, it just in that situation too. It sucks because his career was in WWE, and
mhm.
the only way he can. I'm not saying he can't be highlighted anywhere else, but it's kind of hard to do that when all the footage of him is in WWE. Most of
Yeah,
his works are in WWE. Obviously, he was in New Japan and Stampede, but his where he kind of like broke through was WWE.
right.
And it kind of sinks that I mean, we may never get he may never get that kind of adulation that he should be getting, and the reverence he should get for his work
His work.
in the WWE
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, as far as Vince McMahon, saying like if that was me, I'm the show should still go on. Yeah, I mean, you're Vince McMahon. I believe that for when he said that, I believe he would you know put that in. Hey, if something happens to me, the show goes on. Don't stop it. But the other side of that too is I don't think uh even when he said he was when Bret Hart was like if it was Shane, he wouldn't have went on. He wouldn't have
Right.
continued it.
Right.
Um,
And
and I think
we
he
know
did
that for
say,
a fact because he almost stops the match against Kurt Angle.
yeah,
That real
exactly.
bloodbath match with Kurt Angle. He
Yeah.
almost stops that match.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
So
like, I mean, you could say, if it was me, I would continue it, but not. Yeah, he wouldn't
imagine
definitely allow his kids to go through
imagine
that.
where you
Definitely.
work. Okay, imagine where you work, wherever you work, and imagine your general manager or wherever you work at. There's an unfortunate death where you work at. Okay, and he tells everybody, okay, just don't look over here, just don't go over here, just keep working. Like that wouldn't fly today.
Yeah, no,
And
exactly. No, definitely
I
not.
don't even think that would fly in 1999, but it just flew under the radar, I guess, I don't know. It's just kind of disgusting portion, but
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I
I
mean, like I said, just his sentiments on it, like show must go on, that type of thing. You heard it straight from the guy's mouth. I mean, you kind of before that, you just heard like, that's how Vince would want it. Show must go on. But now you actually get to hear him kind of say it, like you know, you heard it straight from him. He was continuing that show no matter what. He didn't give a
Yeah.
shit. Um, which goes to his again, is it a character? Judging
Mhm.
from that decision, no. Ruthless businessman in real life. That's what he pretty much seems like. Um, and then I'm thinking is it the next episode where they talk about um kind of
No.
like Shane and stuff like that, or was
Yeah,
it the
yeah, yeah,
last
yeah, yeah, yeah,
episode?
yeah, yeah. They talk
Uh
about Shane, and
yeah,
this
so
is
we'll
like
get
the
no,
family
just go to the
stuff.
next episode, episode
Yeah.
5. It's called Family Business, and they talk about they go public with the New York Stock Exchange. You have to go through that.
Mhm.
They end up buying WCW eventually. XFL debuts very rather quickly and then goes away rather quickly. They lose they have a lawsuit. Well, they don't have a lawsuit, but the WWF World Wildlife Fund files
Mhm.
a lawsuit against the WWF World Wrestling Federation for the use of the acronym. They don't fight it; they lose.
Mhm.
So now they drop the F and go with the WWE.
Get the F
Um,
out, baby.
yeah, get the F out. So they have the promotion, get the F out, and all that stuff. Obviously, the ruthless aggression era is happening. They're looking for new stars and stuff like that. Obviously, The Rock's kind of on his way out. Stone Cold's on his way out. So they're looking for that, like, new star. Obviously, John Cena, blah, blah, blah. What brought me to this episode was mainly about Shane and
Mhm.
his relationship with Vince McMahon. And this brings us back to episode 1 with
Mhm.
Vince and his father and the way Vince's father treated him, basically just like a second class citizen. You got to earn my love, and not really earning love, just earning you know I don't know, space to be around him. I guess I don't know. Um, in the this episode kind of highlights from what my own interpretation is the amount of stuff that Shane would go through to get just a thank you from his dad, pretty much. Just
Right.
like something, just some type of adulation from his dad. It takes it through like all the stuff, all the death defying things that Shane's done throughout his
Mm.
career in ring. Um, and it still, I mean, I think what was the final time that he actually hugged him? Was it after the
It
Undertaker
was
match, right?
the Undertaker match.
Undertaker
Yep.
match, the Hell in a Cell
Yep.
match of WrestleMania. So
Yeah.
he's by that time, 2 kids, family man, 3 kids actually, 3 kids, family man, all
Mhm.
that stuff. Finally gets a hug from his dad, but before that, nothing. No adulation, no signs of giving that company up to him. That was the other thing.
Right.
Was like Vince McMahon was not giving that company to anybody but himself. He was going to sell it to somebody. He wasn't not. He was not handing it.
Well,
He was basically going to do the same thing as his father, not hand it out. Like you got to buy it from me.
so this is a quote for Paul Heyman from here.
Oh
This
yeah,
is this is,
that's actually him.
this
He's
is
written
all you
that.
need to say right here. So
Yep.
during so Heyman stated that during a situation that occurred after disagreement over a creative idea in WWE, Vince turned to Shane and he said, "Not while I'm alive." Then all of a sudden, Vince, who was eating something, took his utensil and handed it to Shane, and he says, "Right there," points to his chest.
Yeah.
If you want this so bad, do something because that's what you have to do to make that decision. And if you don't, then I know you're not man enough to do it. And I have to take that into consideration as well. If not, you could buy me out the way I bought out my father. And if I don't get out of your way, then get rid of me the way I would have done to my father when he wasn't doing things my way at all. Wow.
See, and then we bring it back to, like I said, breaking the cycle. Like he was, his mentality, as far like we talked about our fathers, and they're kind of getting into that, not being as cold as their parents were. I'm not sure if I wasn't, my grandfather wasn't alive when I was born, but maybe that was the case. And with Vince just taking that same moniker as his father and applying it still, not trying to change from what it seems like anyway, not trying to change the love for he probably loved his, I don't want to say he didn't love his kids. He probably loved his kids, but he didn't show it in the way that they needed, and from what it seemed like anyway. And like you said, that thing that you just quoted right there with him saying, like, I know if you don't do it, you're not man enough to do it. So right there, he already made the decision. You're not cut for this. You're not going to be anywhere near this company at all. Maybe his sister will be like that, but then you find out later that, she was almost there, but then things happen as far as, allegations, things behind the scenes, and she steps down, and we'll talk about that too. But yeah, I just find it just a crazy dynamic. Just Shane being that, like, I just want my dad to appreciate me, and nothing happens. That's almost sad if you think about it as like a son. I mean, obviously we're sons. And just to think, like, your dad not acknowledging you at all, as far as like you're doing all this crazy shit, you're jumping off of stuff, you're bleeding, you're taking chair shots to the head, you're doing all this wild and crazy stuff, and then nothing, no sign of like any like, hey son, you're doing great. Like he does it when he has 3 kids of his own, already gray haired, 3 kids of his own, wife, his own family. And then he finally gives him a hug. It's like, what the fuck, dude? It's like, dude, your own kid. Like, especially him. Like, he wanted to be, like he said, I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be just like he was my hero, like all that type of stuff. Which a lot of all sons are like, you want to be like your dad. You want to take, things from him and, apply them to your life when you get older.
Right.
But Shane was probably the first one to break the fucking cycle, dude. If you think about it, he was like, I know I'm not wanted. I'm going to go do my own thing.
Right.
The UFC thing.
Yeah.
We should buy the UFC. It's going to be huge. Fuck that shit. I'm not doing that. It's not like wrestling where, like, if these guys get injured, they're done.
Right.
He was right in a sense. They should have bought it, because look at fucking UFC now.
Imagine if he would have bought it. How much more money he would have.
That, and probably, I mean, if he would have let Shane do it and not him take over,
right?
I think it would have been a thing. But yeah, pay me for it, or like put up the money for it. It's like,
I mean, yeah, I can't blame Vince for saying
I
that,
get it. Yeah, I get it.
I guess for that portion, like, yeah.
No,
I'm not gonna just give you something.
But let's do the XFL and fucking that'll fade.
That's just the XFL.
Where did that go? That money could have went to the fucking UFC purchase, and you would have been fine. You would have been all set.
Yeah, one thing they don't talk about too, Vince was also close to, at this time too, buying the Minnesota Vikings as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
What was the reason why he didn't?
He may have gotten outbidded or something. Maybe, possibly, I don't know, but I don't exactly know the details. But I think that was more of a catalyst of starting the XFL. Yeah.
Holy shit! Yeah,
and he's not even a football guy, which is weird to me. But that's the problem with the XFL too. I think he brought too much entertainment into the sport.
Yeah, he's an investment, I guess. You invest in the Minnesota Vikings, and
we make movies.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Jesus Christ. Oh man, but yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, other than that, obviously you have Stephanie also is in this episode, and they talk about her coming up and how she's kind of like everyone that's on that episode talks about how she's kind of like Vince, like a female version of Vince McMahon in a sense where
Mm-hmm.
she's built for the business. She's kind of cutthroat like he is in that sense. Not saying anything bad about Shane, but she seemed to be the heir to the throne essentially if he was gonna step down. But I mean, I don't think he was ever gonna give the company to anybody. I think he was gonna sell it. He was gonna sell it either way, whether it be a family member or someone on the outside. He was not handing it over to anybody. I mean, I don't know him at all. I've never met the guy, but I believe he would not just hand the company here you go.
No.
I feel like you would have to buy it off of him.
Right. And
Like
that's
Triple H
that's basically what happened,
Yeah, like Triple H and Stephanie, if they wanted to take over WWE, they would have had to come up with the money to buy it.
Yeah, and
That's
I
what
think
I
think,
think. And
over the
they would have
last
both stepped away, I think, too.
over the last 5 years, maybe even 10 years, I think that's how I think all wrestling fans kind of thought how it went down
Over my dead body.
is basically how it happened,
Yeah.
We thought, but I guess we thought maybe Vince would still be involved, and obviously he's not. But you want to get to the next episode?
Yeah, let's do it. Last episode,
The finish, brother.
Yeah, like I said, we obviously we'll poor Shane McMahon, we poor Stephanie in that sense. They're never gonna get the company. It looks like anyway. Company goes public. Obviously Shane McMahon leaves and pursues his own stuff. I'm not sure exactly what he did. I'm not too entirely sure. But they get into the finish, which is the last episode, where they talk about obviously Donald Trump and him coming into the play. But they bring up somebody that hasn't been brought up since he did a bad deed, we'll say. Chris Benoit is pretty much a focal point of this episode, which is obviously they talk about CTE as well. One of our favorite superstars does not believe in it, which had a lot of people upset about.
What?
Well, I don't believe in it. Guy wasn't doing the job right. That's what he said. He was like, if you get CTE or you get brain damage,
I actually kind of see Stone Cold's point actually, in some regard.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you're a boxer, yes. If you're a football player, yes. 100% chance you're probably going to get CTE. If you're a wrestler, you probably shouldn't because the way it's choreographed. So like you shouldn't technically get, those type of injuries, head injuries. So he is kind of right, but at the same time, him saying, I just don't believe in it. It's like, no, there's studies.
Yeah.
They study it now.
Well, but I mean, you have a lot of people
to deny it is kind of crazy.
I think wrestling, for Steve Austin's sake, wrestling was starting to change a little bit where you getting this more realism in the in-ring action. Not to say that what Stone Cold did was, it wasn't.
Oh no, they were taking some crazy ass.
Yeah. I'm not saying that, but like when instead of like taking the chair shots, you have the chair shots, but on top of that, you have these more death-defying moves, like the headbutt off the top ropes, like the I remember there's one match, him and Jericho, he's doing the suicide dive, and he has that I don't know if it was a chair or if it might have been a trash can lid. I think it was a trash can lid, but it looked vicious. It just goes head first, boom.
Yeah.
Like, suicide dives, you're taking more high risk. There's more high risk. And, obviously Stone Cold's not a high risk guy. He's not going to climb the top ropes, so I think in that regard, like you look at, back in my day, kind of thing, not trying to characterize Stone Cold as a boomer, so to speak, but in Stone Cold's era, the way he was taught, you don't hurt the guy, and I think wrestling is still like that, but you don't do these death-defying moves that can maybe get you into a situation. But now there's more on the line. Now we've seen everything. Now we got to do something different.
Yeah.
and that's when you have what Chris Benoit gives and he does, and there's a lot of, I guess, lore that he idolized, Dynamite Kid,
Yep.
who of course did this and did these moves, and I don't know, as far as, yeah, can you fully blame CTE? Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think you can, but I think there's a part of this too. I mean, in some regard, a small part, very small part, that maybe the man was just kind of loony, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you got to take that into account, right?
Yeah. So, because I mean, look how many people who've had CTE have they gone killed their family and killed themselves?
Aaron Hernandez.
Well, okay, my bad.
Not his family, but I mean his friends. He did. He killed his
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah, my bad. Okay, I forgot about him.
No, I don't know why I'm laughing about that, but
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, it's one of those things where like it's a obviously CTE is a you have to I'm not sure how many concussions you have to have in order to get CTE, but that's where it comes from. It's basically like multiple concussions, multiple brain or head injuries can lead to CTE. It doesn't You don't automatically get it right away when you
Right.
injure your head. It has to be like compiled over. I'm not sure how many like years or however it is, but the amount of head trauma you get um can lead to CTE. And they did there's X-rays and stuff like that they have for multiple people from like a normal brain to what a CTE brain looks like. And you could, I mean, I'm not obviously not a doctor at all, but you could definitely tell visually there is a change from your normal brain to a concussioned CTE brain. It's yeah, it's crazy. So
I mean, you can't tell me like doing that headbutt night in and night out, because I mean that was a regular move of his, and he may have done it a couple times a night.
yeah,
You can't
and
tell
taking
me,
hit chair shots to the head
yeah, and
too.
take a chair shot, that at some point he did damage to his brain.
Yeah. Over that amount of time, like it's not going to happen right away, but over how many years of doing,
Right.
in
No matter
ring,
how good he is, and I do think he was a professional. I think he, made it very believable. I think,
yes,
I think he's definitely, had this not happened, he would have been, gone down as one of the all-time greats, right?
yeah, definitely, yeah,
He was like a technician in the ring. I was a fan of his. Obviously not. This whole stuff is not gonna, really make me miss him much, should I say? Um, but it goes more to, I think, corporate responsibility, and this is where Vince, he wants to be this corporate guy, and it goes back also to the Jesse Ventura stuff. You got to take care of your people.
yeah,
You got to be able to have a human resource department that can say, "Hey, I'm not doing so well. I need to take some time off."
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
I need to have this. If you're gonna make me an employee, make me an employee. But or make me only work here. At least give me some benefits.
yeah, exactly,
When you have this corporate structure, all that corporate structure, all that stuff is very important in a structure, because you have to take care of people. Um, and I think that's what WWE wasn't doing, which was the big shift into what we're kind of seeing now, where they are taking care
yeah.
of people a lot better.
And that comes down to leadership. It comes down to Vince
Mm-hmm.
McMahon not making the decision to go that route. So I mean, he's as much to blame as when a company gets in trouble, they name the CEO. And the
Right.
CEO either like steps down or whatever the case may be. But it all comes down to him. He's a decision maker. And if he's not making those decisions to take care of his people, obviously they're set up. I meant to say this earlier, but when we were talking about like the union stuff, they're all contractors essentially.
Right.
It's set up as just like
And they're still like that today.
yeah, which is, I mean, obviously, I'm assuming now maybe they with the new regime in place, there's little bit of a different, I know I remember CM Punk saying recently that there's a way to take time off if you need to. Like you just go on like any other job. You go on a computer, you sign in and
You go to
say I need
Cronus. You go on your Cronus.
yeah, you
Go
say
on
hey,
your workforce.
you can obviously you can tell like right now too. We'll kind of bring it a little bit forward. I'll use CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. You haven't seen
Right.
them since Bad Blood
Yeah.
because
Good point.
head injuries. They can't be on TV. They can't be wrestling right
Oh,
now.
brother.
They both took some crazy headshots. Now they have
Yeah.
to take time off. They have to do the protocol. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it should have been back then. But I mean, and a lot of obviously, if you watch a lot of shoot interviews and stuff like that, for guys and gals that work for Vince McMahon, it was it was nonstop. It was
Mm-hmm.
I'm injured. No, we have a tour coming up. You can't take any time off. You got to be
Mm-hmm.
on that tour. So it was very taxing, and not to give Chris Benoit any leeway or anything like that, but um, just to give you an idea of like what they're going through. Definitely check out watch any shoot interview with when they talk about travel and working for the WWE and the amount of shows they had to do, and you can make your own conclusions to it. Um, and obviously they had Chris Nowinski on there, Harvard graduate Chris Nowinski,
Mm-hmm.
which is like one of the lead. I mean, he is one of the leading people
Experts.
with CTE. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
experts in CTE. Um, you know, they like you said, they end up bringing him back. Like when that happened, I think that's when the culture started of like these head injuries are actually happening. They had him come in and do presentations about CTE and head injuries and being they should be checked after a match.
They started wearing Guardian caps.
Yeah, like you might have a great match, but hey, what's a few like 10 to 15 minutes of you sitting down with like one of the on field doctors and checking out your eyesight and making sure you can how many
Yeah.
fingers am I holding up, that type of stuff. Like what was stopping that? They had to like wait till someone murdered their whole family to to put that like kind of policy in place. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And this is where gaslighting still occurs. So then there's a story that gets brought up too, which is ridiculous. So you and I were both at WrestleMania 30. We've talked about this many times. Of course, this is the event where Undertaker, the streak is broken, right?
Yes. Oh
So
yes, we didn't even
this
talk. Is this
is
the same episode or no? Was
yes,
that the
yes, this is
episode?
the same
Okay.
episode. So this is where they're talking about CTE and things like that, and this is where of course they're interviewing Undertaker, and he says, actually back up. They said, Vince get and has given the interview, and he's saying, we told Mark Calloway, Undertaker, that we made that decision, the day of that, Brock was going to go over. So we tell
Yeah.
Mark, and then it cuts to Undertaker, how he's talking about it, in the match. 5 minutes into it, he bumps his head and or something, and he gets a concussion and he blacks out. He doesn't remember anything, and then he collapses when he gets in the into Gorilla. And Vince, of course, goes to the. He actually stops what he's doing. Goes, stops the show, or not stops the show. Stops what he's doing. He goes to the hospital. And this is very interesting to me because Vince, the gaslight master, says, "Oh no, that wasn't anything because of any type of injury he had. I think he was in such shock that he was losing that he just forgot everything. So he remembers everything up until the supposed head injury, right? The alleged head injury, or whatever the spot that occurred, but forgets everything else, including his own name in the hospital. Come on, Vince. We're not fucking stupid, buddy. That's the delusional Vince McMahon that we've seen since in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And where he just thinks, I'll just bullshit my way through this whole thing until I can sell it. And that's basically where we're kind of at now, right? I think so.
Do you think Undertaker heard that at all? That what what Vince McMahon said about he was in such shock that he wasn't concussed, he wasn't
I
injured,
don't
he was.
know. I, th- I guess this is one. I guess I don't. You know, a lot of people are kind of been not because necessarily the Trump stuff, but a lot of people have kind of coming up after the Taker here recently
Yeah.
because he just like I guess he's telling his way of the story, and oh no, that's not how it went down. Or whatever. I don't know. The internet's going to be the internet, but I guess one issue that I have with Taker is, man, he is just so tied to whatever the company's doing or whatever Vince McMahon is doing. Like he's got such blind loyalty, and I guess if I'm looking through this and like, how can you just have like blind loyalty to a man like this? I think he's like he looks at it and it's just like, you know, that's Vince being Vince.
Yeah, it's one of those, father figure. A lot of people say
Right.
that he was a father figure.
Father figure, pal.
Yeah, father figure to everyone else except for Shane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to say he wasn't a father to Shane, but
Right.
you know, from what from Shane's like interviews and stuff like that on this docuseries, seemed like he wasn't like he was always trying to vie for that love,
Mm-hmm.
but other people in the company was getting that love that he was
Right.
vying for, which is kind of crazy to think.
It
But
is.
yeah, the unwielding loyalty to Vince McMahon.
It's
If
weird,
you're,
kind of
yeah,
honestly.
it is. It is very strange. It is like I mean,
Like
even Trish Stratus on there was like
right.
talking her shit. She wasn't really
You
showing
could
loyalty.
appreciate a person what they've done for you, but you don't have
Yeah,
to be loyal to them. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that,
She
those things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I mean,
So
you're not gonna be like Stone. I mean, I'm not sure what Stone Cold and Vince's relationship is, but I mean, they didn't have the greatest relationship like behind the scenes. It seemed like
right,
towards the end
right,
of his star power and stuff like that. So, I mean, the father, like I said, the father figure stuff is kind of like it's off putting a little bit.
yeah,
But obviously, towards the end of this episode, they get into the. I mean, we've talked about it all the time on Raw Down. The Janelle Grant
yep.
lawsuit
We,
against Vincent Kennedy McMahon with sexual misconduct and trafficking is what the allegations are. And now it's a federal case, so
mhm.
it's in the government's hands right now. So that's serious. It's not just some woman trying to. A lot of people trying to get some money, trying to come up on a bag. What do they say?
Yeah,
No, it's the federal government has other uh evidence of his wrongdoing.
right,
They have paused her lawsuit and they are taking over. So that's when you know it's something serious.
right,
And they actually have evidence. The
yeah,
federal government does not step in unless they actually have evidence on you, and they're trying to
yep,
find more. But yeah, so they get into that. Um, he's not really interviewed as much. They do interview Bruce Pritchard after the fact. I think he's the only one that shows up on that. I think everyone else is before because they do this like last, kind of like roundup thing saying, is Vince McMahon a character or is he the real person? And then like, each person's like they take like, he's it's one of the. I think they all pretty much said it's one and the same. He is that on-screen character. I think they all pretty much alluded to it or even said it. I don't think anyone said he wasn't that character. I think they all pretty much like anyone that was interviewed, Stone Cold, Trish, except for Bruce Pritchard, Trish
yeah.
Stratus.
Bruce
Um,
Pritchard is just
yeah, so they interview him after the allegations, and yeah, he was not a big fan of the docuseries after that.
no, no. Like again, I understand being appreciative of somebody that gives you an opportunity,
Yeah,
but you don't have to. I've had terrible bosses in my day.
he's not with the company anymore. There's
You
no
know,
need to suck up to him at all.
I've had terrible bosses that have given me opportunities and that have helped me get to where I'm at, but I hated the way they treated me,
Yeah,
and I'll never be loyal to them. I can appreciate what the bosses have done for me, you know, because without them, I would be where I'm at. But that doesn't mean I'm loyal to them.
yeah, yep,
And that goes for anything in life. You don't have to be loyal to somebody because they give you an opportunity.
exactly.
It's what you do with that opportunity,
Yep,
and you have to take what you've done and give yourself a pat on the back. You know, like especially Undertaker. Like you take Undertaker. Yes, Vince had the idea of the character, the Undertaker, but it was Mark Calloway that made the Undertaker the
yep,
Undertaker.
exactly.
If you give that character to Kevin Nash, let's say, okay, because he's a big guy, those around there at that time. If you give it to Kevin Nash, he doesn't make it the Undertaker. It's like, whoa, this is kind of weird, and that character ends up becoming with something we laugh at,
Yep,
becomes, gobbledygooker or something like that, But Mark Calloway took it serious, and he was like, okay, this is my opportunity. And yes, Vince gave you that opportunity, but that doesn't mean you have to be loyal to him necessarily.
yeah, exactly. Did you hear what he said about you at WrestleMania 30?
Right,
That
right.
you were just in shock that you lost, that
Yeah,
you didn't have a concussion.
right.
Like, come on, dude. Like, not to say that's the way he thinks about,
Hello, McFly.
yeah, pretty much. Not to say that's his sentiment towards Undertaker, and obviously they have a judge from the Last Ride docuseries. They do have a it seems like they have a very close relationship, but
Well, they had that I think it was a UFC fight that was in Saudi Arabia. This was before the allegations
yeah,
really
they were
came out.
together. Yeah,
They were together, yeah, and it was weird because Vince was like using a cane to walk,
yeah.
and
He's
uh
there was a
apparently,
rumor
and
he
that
was in bad health at one point too.
yeah,
So like,
yeah, yeah. So I don't know, but uh
I mean,
I don't know.
they did
The
ask him if he would ever retire, and he said no. Like if you, that's like if you retire, you die. So like that was his sentiment. Like if he ever retired, he would like people that retire, they start to break down, and you know that's when everything kicks in. So maybe that was his sentiment. Maybe that's why he never wanted to leave. You know, wrestling. He always wanted to work and move because he felt like he was gonna die if he stopped working. But I think I mean, I said episode 6, which was named the finish. I don't think I said that at the beginning, but
mm,
I mean, it literally is the finish. It's the
right.
it's pretty much like the they like I said, there's no really not really everyone was interviewed on this one. I think Bruce Pritchard was the only one that was interviewed after the allegations, and he said I'm not you guys suck pretty much like this documentary
Yeah.
team. Um,
I
and
laughed at that part.
in
Like,
lack of a
dude,
better terms.
why are you even talking to him then?
Yeah. But yeah, obviously we know the allegations are out there against Vince McMahon from Janelle Grant. We know the federal case. The new case that just popped up was the Ring Boys. That's the new lawsuit that is filed against Vince and Kennedy McMahon. So yeah, I think that's the McMahon docuseries in a nutshell. Like I said, we're not gonna go through like every single aspect,
Right.
but I think just hit on
I
the
think
main points of how is he Mr. McMahon the character, or is he that person in real life? And I mean, my own interpretation is I think what you see is what you get. Personally, that's
right.
my that's my 2 cents. Not to like be clickbaity or try to be like that like person just trying to say anything crazy. I just think you know like you said, J Bone. You can do good things for people. That doesn't mean you're a good person
Right.
at all. That could be the bad outweighs the good, and vice versa.
Right.
So I think in this case, the bad outweighs the good in this sense. I think he did a lot of good for. I think he did a lot of good for a little amount of people.
Yeah.
and he did a lot of bad to a lot of people. So that's what I think. I think not that I'm not a judge, jury, and executioner guy. I just think he's the same. I don't think Mr. McMahon's a character. I think like I said, the Attitude Era, everything he did on there was him just living out whatever fantasies he had. We're not, like I said, we don't have to get into the Trish Stratus, him making out with everybody and all that type of stuff. I mean, he lived out his fantasies on TV. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
he knew he's a smart guy. Wouldn't like if we're all calling Vince McMahon a genius in what he's done with the wrestling business. You don't think he's a genius in the sense where, hey, I'm a sick bastard. You know what? I want to show my perversions on TV, and I can do that because it's my show, and people will just think it's a show.
Right.
That's not me in real life, but I can just live it out and do what I want to do.
Yeah, I think overall, the documentary was fair. Actually, because we had that statement before the documentary came out, like, oh, they use editing tricks and things like that.
He was trying to stop it. Don't forget about that. He was trying to stop it before it came out. So,
I think it was fair, and honestly, I don't think it necessarily for me he didn't paint him a bad light. But again, I know about a lot of these things, so like a lot of these things were shocking to me. I guess there's a couple things, but so it's like, I mean, I knew going into it, he's not a good person,
Yeah.
So I don't think I had like any issues or reservations. I think, like I said, I think it was fair overall. So
yeah, I don't think it was a hit piece like everyone thinks it was. He was in it. If it was a hit piece, he wouldn't have been in it. They wouldn't have had his words at all in it. It would have been other people talking about him.
And like, so one guy that helped produce this was David Shoemaker from Masked Man Show.
Yes,
and I think that like he's like one of the most fair podcasters out there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like he literally like he talks good things about AEW, bad things about AEW, good things about WWE, bad things about WWE. Like he's one that definitely calls it down the line.
Yeah,
that was another funny thing that Pritchard said. He's like, yeah, you got guys like Meltzer and Shoemaker. Like, what did Shoemaker do?
Yeah. I mean,
you can't put Meltzer and Shoemaker in the same box. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was actually pretty much the honorable mention. Definitely, Dave Meltzer was actually really good on this docuseries.
Oh yeah.
As much as we crap on him about like his his takes and all that stuff, he's actually really good. And they reached out to, I mean, Dave Meltzer being on a docuseries about Vince McMahon with Vince McMahon actually too, which is kind of surreal as well. Like when would you ever see that? But they were friends at one point. I think they said that at the beginning, like early in the docuseries, like in the 80s and stuff like that. They, he would obviously write stories about the WWF and be a part of that whole thing. And obviously they, separated. They went, separated ways and stuff like that. But, you got to give credit where credit's due as far as, Dave Meltzer's concerned. I know he gets a lot of flack nowadays because of, he does a lot of fanboying when it comes to AEW and all that stuff. But I mean, and he, like we talked about before, he has a certain style of wrestling that he likes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that AEW's given that, New Japan's given that. I mean, WWE might be doing it. He did give, a 5-star recently to a WWE match. Was it
right.
Drew and CM Punk?
CM Punk, yeah.
I mean, he's done it previously too with Cody and
Cody and Seth.
Cody and AJ. He did too as well.
Yeah, Cody and AJ. That's right. Yeah,
so I mean, he's starting to warm up a little bit. But I mean,
you have to admit through the products change and
yes,
that's something. And when we watch
Rumble or wrestling oriented with the new product,
when we watch current day wrestling, it's definitely, and we always talk about it, right? You need reason number ...
Oh
number,
yeah.
why Vince is not in it, but
yeah, Motor City Machine Guns debuted being invented a SmackDown. That's one of the reasons right there.
Oh, they're so tiny.
Yeah. So not to knock on that at all. But yeah, I mean that would have been there would have been something else if he debuted. But Yeah, I thought, like I said, I thought the docuseries was good. Like I said, we knew a lot of this stuff, except for like me. Like I said, I didn't really know about the Ring Boy thing. I heard rumors about it, but that they kind of actually brought it up on there. I said Phil Mushnick wasn't bad on that docuseries as well.
No, he wasn't bad, but he
Have
was
to, have to
pretty
give him a
bad.
shout out.
He was pretty bad with Piers Morgan.
Yeah, he was a lot better. He looked a lot better on the docuseries than he did with Piers Morgan. He looked very unorganized and
Yeah.
wasn't ready for the wasn't ready for that because he had freaking
No.
Vince Russo to go back and forth with too. Which
Bro,
is,
you weren't at the steroid symposium,
I
okay?
was there.
I was there, bro. And listen, no, I will call you bro if I want to, bro.
That's funny. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, he has an enemy, a forever enemy in Phil Mushnick. So that's never gonna change. But yeah, like I said, definitely a great documentary. Definitely check it out. It's still up. Obviously, it's it's relevant now because of the new allegations that popped up with the Ring Boys. I'm assuming there's going to be more allegations that pop up. As that's how it is with these types of things. Whether or not people want them, in the public or not, it's going to
Well, the snooker
happen.
thing is possible. You never know.
Yeah, the second thing might pop up. I mean, obviously with a lot of these, a lot of these major companies and CEOs, you're starting to see step down.
Abercrombie Fitch,
Yeah, that just happened recently. So it's
Harvey Weinstein.
it seems disconnected, but for some reason, to me, it seems all connected because they're all being accused of the same thing, which is trafficking. Which is kind of crazy. Which I think it's gonna. I don't know. I can't say it might take down a lot of people that you know and love. So just be prepared to be very upset. Be prepared to maybe delete a lot of your music catalog. Maybe get ready to delete a lot of your movies you purchased, maybe, or get
Because
ready
we're
to
bad boys for life.
yeah, maybe get ready to your Blu-ray collection because there might be some movie stars in there. But yeah, I think it's not going to stop. It's going to be continuous,
and it's good. It's good. We need to.
Yeah,
As a
it just
society, we can't accept this anymore. So.
yeah, it just thinks that a lot. It took this long when you had a lot of child stars, and a lot of different people talking about this since. I mean, oh my god, since I was like, I mean, since the 80s, I mean, maybe since the 90s, I would say there's a lot of that stuff go. A lot of people like talking about it, but really not anything happening to it. But with the internet and social media and the way we get news and the way we get fed information, nothing stays hidden for long.
Nope.
Especially if there are people that were around back then, back in the 70s and 80s, that were around these people and are part of these situations, then they still have access to social media or that type of stuff. Those stories are gonna get out. So yeah, I mean, this is just one of the many stories that's happening right now, and obviously with Vince McMahon, like you said, we talked about Sean Combs, aka Diddy. He's pretty much going through the same exact federal investigation, same exact reason as well. So
that Johnson and Johnson, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy times, and it's good. I'm glad we're here to report on it. We're the only ones besides Piers Morgan that'll actually talk about the Vince McMahon documentary or Vince McMahon itself. I mean, I'm not sure if people just don't care about it or I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know.
You don't really hear about it. Like it's like no one's giving feedback on anything. People are staying like kind of quiet on it. But like I said, we're here to do it. We're here to report it, talk about it.
Yeah.
See if Vince is a piece of
here
shit or not. I gave my 2 cents. I think he's the same person. I don't think Vince McMahon's a character. I think Vince McMahon is who he is. He just got to, live it out in front of everybody without anyone batting an eye to it and thinking it's a part of entertainment. It's just crazy times and shit like that. It's it's attitude era. Anything goes.
Right.
It was just a perfect time, the perfect storm, we'll say, for him to do that stuff. But yeah, any final thoughts for you on the Vince McMahon docuseries?
That's all I pretty much got. That's all I got.
All right. thank you all for joining us. I think this might be a two-parter. I might split this into two because it's a long
All right.
episode. It's a
Hell yeah.
long ass episode. But yeah, definitely. Well, I'll do a two-parter maybe on this. The Mr. McMahon. So look out for. I think obviously, hopefully, I'm gonna probably just release it this week. I know I have some
Okay.
other interviews, but I think this needs to be out there in the open.
Out there in the
Hopefully,
ether.
hopefully, when we get flagged by the Phelpses, hopefully they listen to the episode and they condone everything we say.
Sorry, Sheena. Actually, I was on my best behavior. We didn't actually. We were talking
Yeah,
about
we didn't go too
freaking-
crazy at all. I mean, we
Yeah.
did. We gave our sense. We didn't get vulgar or lewd or anything like that.
I didn't have any adult beverages.
Yeah, I think we were pretty clean with our takes on this.
Yeah.
So I think we'll let it slide through the
Okay.
cracks. But yeah, definitely check this out when it appears, and you know, that's it. I think that's do you want to throw any plugs in there or let everyone know
Well,
what
check
you're-
us out on Raw Down every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Patreon, theterminaltime.com. Could check out me and Marco every Tuesday night. We dive into this kind of stuff every week.
Yeah.
We feature WWE stuff. We're the WWE show of the world of the AEW marks. So
Yes.
So yeah, come check us out at theterminaltavern.com, because it is time to get raw, it is time to get down, it is time for the number one source of all things WWE. But yeah, that's it.
And like I said, yeah, this is basically just this episode is pretty much like a long form version of what we pretty much talk about week to week, because there's always a Vince McMahon story that pops up pretty much every time we do the show. Whether or not we talk about it or not, sometimes they're minuscule. This past week, obviously we talked about the ring boys and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that was more current. So I figured, you know what?
Let's
Why
get it.
not do this episode? Hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, definitely check me out, MVP Marco, everywhere on social media except for TikTok. It's MVP Marco _. Check out the Chick Foley show, chickfoley.com, where you get all the links to everything, to the show, to the Patreon. Definitely sign up for that. Check out Chick Foley show on X/Twitter to follow along as well. And that's pretty much it. I will catch you guys. I'll catch your ass down the road.
Hell yeah.
Later.